girl was sent flying and crashes into the soil like trash. The other students are confused, while she slowly loses consciousness. In front of her was a figure holding a sword and without a head, a boss named Dark Sentinel. All the students are scared. They weren't informed about this danger. While this poor girl tries to keep everyone calm, saying that they had a chance to win, they all know the truth. They're all going to die. The creature swings the sword high, then slashes down to kill every single student. The bunch of losers is sent flying, while the whole place is destroyed. At that moment, they all knew they had no chance, and some of them had already died. In front of the girl, her best friend was dead. As if trying to spot ants on the floor, she saw her friend calling for him and the sentinel approaching closer. Poor girl tried to cast a basic fireball, but it did nothing against the creature's blue flames. And before she could react, the monster was in front of her and just slashed down. She knew that was her end, so she just shouted for help. When someone suddenly said space-time magic stopped chains and the creature's sword was stuck in place, Kurapika style. He asked if the girl was fine, and she couldn't believe how he was stopping that attack, but he just told her to stay back. He was about to farm some aura. The creature strikes down and he jumps to the side, gets some distance and approaches its leg. He hits the sword of the creature squarely and redirects the attack, goes for a slash into its hips. The monster tanks the incoming attack with the sword, which unfortunately breaks right on the spot. The sentinel then starts casting a dark mass spear and throws the bomb at him. Everything explodes, but then the boy uses the quick body time magic that repositions him behind the creature, and says that yeah, his sword broke, but that doesn't mean he can't use it anymore. So he activates the material rewind skill, and his sword starts to reconstruct itself. The attack went straight to the knight's hand that was holding the monster's arm, and with that, his slash cut right through it and the creature lost its glow. Boom, explosion. The monster's dead, and she couldn't believe it. Nah, she just lost her best friend but is making faces and blushing because our G asked her to keep all of this a secret. The reason? See, if we roll back just a little, this worthless mammal was sent flying like a rag doll. Look at those proud citizens praising the boy for his body sliding skills. Brawl struggled to get up. He's tired and asks, "It's over? Return what I asked you. I even bought that for you." He bought a juicy cheddar McMelt. Yeah, our boy is the errand boy, but the model classmates aren't feeling too keen on it and wanted more. So he makes a new fireball and throws it like an arrow. Damn, for 1 second I thought my G would have changed right here. But nope, bro's playing tank. But then that girl shows up to intimidate the guys, and they give the cell phone back in a polite manner, with just a small scratch. She comes running asking the worthless loser if he's fine, to which he says that she should stay far away or she'll get bullied too. He's crying like the loser he is, while everyone at school can't believe how this loser got into this prestigious school. Crazy because he doesn't even know how. His parents out of the blue put him there. He had zero magic and the nickname of God of Plagues, so why is he here? And how does he become the aura farmer from before? See, after his daily task of being the school trash, one day he went home without doing anything, like the loser he was, but on his door he found a strange letter. He felt something ominous, but decided to open it, and suddenly the letter sucked him out of his room and put him in the middle of some sort of galaxy. A strange floating creature said that Kyujo Haruto was a 16-year-old loser right now, but the monster in front of him was his mana from the future. This is a letter coming from later in his life. In 10 years he's going to become the strongest space-time mage, but unfortunately that's too late, so that's why his training has to begin now. He needed to master a never-before-seen space and time magic as fast as possible, and just so he could believe, the creature sent him to the F-rank dungeon in Shinjuku. At first he was confused and not sure if this letter was true, but the letter guided him to a secret passage, and when the doors opened he saw in the middle of a fully darkened room a crystal tied to chains. That was known as the crystal cube. If you touch it you get a skill. The thing turns red when this loser loses his courage. The whole room begins to crack and energy demolishes it all, and everything that was falling begins to reconstruct itself and turns into a stone giant, and before he could notice, a beam of energy hits him squarely. I thought he was going to awaken, but nah, bro is dead. Look at this dude turn ragdoll. But then he remembered how much he likes his best friends. Such cool guys. And for those guys he had to survive. Not today, because he was just turned into a pulp of blood. But that's when the requirements to awaken the space-time magic were hit, and now he was going into a rollback. Pillar of blue energy. And in a second he's back to 100. Finally, he had awakened his mana attributes, and all the skills that come with this awakening. The mana was going to explain that this attribute doesn't even exist right now in this time, while the golem was about to pound down my boy, but he jumped high and noticed that his body felt so much lighter, and while he was fighting the golem, the latter was giving instructions. Now that he has this attribute, he just needs to feel the flow of time. If he understands how things are going to happen, he doesn't even need eyes. The golem comes for another attack, while our boy stands there with his eyes closed. The punch gets closer and closer to his face, and the moment he opens his eyes, he instinctively dodges last second. Captain Levi style, he starts to climb the creature's arm, goes straight above and hits squarely on its head. The cube inside the golem cracks. The creature goes purple and explodes. With that, he obtains a ton of points and experience while being sure that letter was real, and it was at that moment that the letter told him that the friend he likes so much is in danger in a dungeon. Therefore, the whole sentinel fight happened, and our boy farmed some aura to save his baby doll, who is now completely confused about how he got so strong. He was the worthless, trashiest guy from school, so how was he able to do anything? She kept pressing on with the compliments, and he just lied to her, saying that he was just practicing some special source in his skill before. I like my MC like that, lying to women without a single drop of remorse. And look at the poor girl's face, she completely believes him. Now he's awakened, but his morale and score are still trash as always at school. No one respects this guy. So the next day came, and he was about to leave when his best friends forever were just waiting, calling our boy to have some fun and play some cool games. They're saying now that his friends are in the hospital needing money for expenses. he has to help, because him being the dude of plagues, he brought bad luck to them all. Bro stayed silent for a second, and they're about to warm his ass, and that's when he just said that he had enough. The 3 pieces of trash in front of him should shut up. The guys went laughing like hyenas, and then charged at him, but the punches were frozen in time. In a second he hit 2, 3, and everyone fell to their knees like a good girlfriend. They turned back to curse at him while being confused, but my man just said that whoever gets close to him again will meet Jesus. Now our boy is questioning himself in class. If the future stuff is true, why did he need to awaken so much earlier? What's going to happen that's so important? Class started. The teacher called out our hero to be the first to have his magic measured. Having lived his entire life with no magic, the hero began to wonder about the outcome of this measurement now that he controls diamond space. And so he decided to resort to his new powers, upon placing his hand on the mirror and concentrating his magic, before unleashing it all at once, made the mirror emit a blue light that shocked the professor. The teacher couldn't believe his eyes, as the bright light turned into an explosion, breaking the magic mirror to everyone's shock. Haruto regretted his action, stating how it made him uselessly the center of attention, while his childhood friend once left amused. At the end of classes, the children began to gossip about our hero, debating whether or not he has a powerful unknown magic that broke the mirror. Upon hearing the children whisper good things about him for a change, our hero was somewhat left feeling odd and uncomfortable. But just then, he was approached by someone. Yet no one was in sight. The voice then asked him to look downward, after finally laying his eyes on the one talking to him. The young man was left utterly shocked, as it was a talking plushie. Having recognized his own voice, Haruto couldn't believe that it was his future self that took this appearance. The future mage explained how this was a technique proper to their magic that allowed him to control his plushies, yet our hero was still confused. With that, the plushie decided to jump straight to the trivial matter, affirming that they had no time to waste as the Chaos Dragon that appeared much later in his timeline had made its entrance. This left our hero shocked, as the plushie explained how dangerous the creature was, seeing how it took countless lives by wiping out the guild area, causing a disaster like never before, and how the Chaos Dragon was an alpha-type extermination target in his timeline. Hearing this made a chill run down the present Haruto's spine, as the future one explained that the monster who appeared early should be slain at all cost, or risk seeing the same unparalleled disaster in this timeline as well. Upon hearing this, the boy stated that they should call the Adventurers Guild in order to get an extermination squad, stating how the fight would be somehow even if they had powerful allies on their side, yet the plushie affirmed that it was too late for that. Suddenly, a great shadow flew above them. The intrigued Haruto looked at the sky and was left horrified, as the Chaos Dragon had already made its entrance. Haruto was left shocked upon seeing the beast out of a dungeon, so his future self explained how this wild, migrating type of monster was always moving. Upon seeing the flying worm pass above them, the young man was left alerted, seeing how the dragon would result in numerous deaths among the students. Just as the students began to walk away, glad that it was the end of the day, they all looked down in intrigue upon seeing the sun suddenly disappear, only to be thrown into panic upon seeing the giant Chaos Dragon. The monster then spotted its prey and charged at them from the sky, leaving them to run horrified. Suddenly, a blonde girl asked everyone to take their spots while urging the civilian students to flee to the dorms. 5 courageous mages in white decided to take on the Chaos Dragon. The rushing hero recognized them as the mage security guard of the student council. Just like that, the spell was activated. All 5 of them decided to aim the same magic at the flying worm. Just like that, the fearsome monster was bombarded with powerful attacks. The blonde leader then gathered her power and urged her allies to keep the dragon away from the school. Suddenly, a giant circle appeared right above the Chaos Dragon. The security guard launched a spell so powerful that upon coming in contact with the flying beast, resulted in a great destructive explosion. The 4 mages were left stunned, assuming that she had won, and just as she was getting satisfied with her own achievement, she suddenly looked in disbelief, seeing how the Chaos Dragon was left unscratched by her anti-dragon magic attack. The dark creature then charged up his breath in order to counterattack, before launching a powerful beam at the 5 mages, leaving them utterly shocked. After taking the spell head-on, the 5 security guards of the student council found themselves getting quickly wiped out by a single attack, leaving the hero stunned. His future self pointed out that this outcome was expected, seeing how they were mere children, making the present one urgent to stop his remarks. Shortly after, a weird thick liquid was thrown in our hero's face. This left him intrigued by the plushie's action, so it explained how this was dragon pheromones, which are used to attract dragons, and how despite being wild migrating beasts, they weren't very sharp, which would certainly result in the Chaos Dragon chasing after our hero, who was left startled. Future Haruto urged his present self to slay the dragon, in order to showcase the might of his space-time magician. After receiving the liquid head-on, our hero was rendered the dragon's only target, as his future self urged him to kill the mighty beast. The plushie then pointed out how the dragon was charging at them, and so our hero decided to make a run for it, when suddenly he heard a familiar voice that left him surprised. He then saw his childhood friend helping some other student. Stating how he didn't want her to get involved in the battle, our hero decided to lure the monster out of school, while his future self was glad to have fewer viewers. And so Quick Body was used in order to enhance his speed, and began to chase him across the city. until he arrived at train Nakano Station in Tokyo. Seeing how the train yard was currently empty, the plushie urged the hero to guide the Chaos Dragon there. Shortly after, Haruto asked the plushie about the beast's strengths and weaknesses. According to it, the dragon possessed a dark attribute and an unparalleled fire force of a breath, along with a miasma layer that delays negative effects, and that it wouldn't be affected by regular attacks, seeing how it had physical resistance, making the man realize how truly powerful the future monster it is. Our hero listened closely as his future self explained how the dragon was so dumb that it could be easily lured with the pheromones that are worth almost $3,000. Yet upon hearing the price, the hero was left completely shocked, and couldn't be more irritated as the plushie declared that the funds were subtracted from his bank account. With that, Haruto began to question the plushie about its knowledge regarding his PIN number, yet upon seeing his future self crack a vicious smile, the present Haruto understood it all. The plushie decided to reassure him by stating that his losses would be covered quickly, seeing how defeating the dragon will result in a grand reward, explaining how the funds were the least impressive part of the promised treasure, as the real prize was a space-time magic-related space cube that the Chaos Dragon would drop. With that, the plushie decided to talk once again about the fight ahead, explaining how this worm was still young and that his core was unprotected. But just as he was about to reveal the core's placement, the Chaos Dragon had suddenly found them and charged right ahead. The both of them dodged the powerful blast at the last second. Future Haruto urged present Haruto, who was drawing out his sword, to stay on his guard, which the boy found obvious. With that, the dragon unleashed once again a powerful breath that our hero barely managed to dodge. Even he couldn't believe that he got out unscathed. But just then, he was left stunned by what he was seeing, as one powerful being managed to connect, leaving him to scream in agony. With that, a great explosion occurred. The dragon waited patiently for the result to appear from behind the dust. But just then, a blue light ascended from the ground, leaving it startled. The hero explained that his past variant was the one that took the powerful dragon attack head-on. Future Haruto was impressed to see his present self create a space-time cloning technique as such in order to avoid a powerful attack. With that, the protagonist jumped towards the dragon, before quickly locating its core. Just like that, Haruto placed all of his strength in one swing, in order to slash the core of the Chaos Dragon. Yet to his shock, it felt like he was striking the void. Suddenly, the dragon exploded. To our hero's shock, the beast then began to reform itself behind the space-time magician. And so Haruto turned to his future self and called him out for not telling him about this trait of the monster. The plushie then remembered to warn Haruto about being wary when attacking, seeing how his target could turn its entire body into miasma. With that, the hero urged the stuffed animal to warn him about similar things in advance. Just then, his future self remembered that the dragon could give form to the miasma in order to form a legion of small dragons. With that, Haruto was left annoyed as he found himself in a tough spot. As the hero pointed out how regular attacks were ineffective, his future self pointed out how this beast should have been appearing half a decade from now. And when asked about this abnormal presence, the plushie pointed out that it might be due to the change in the timeline. And after it asked our hero to deal with it, the young man realized that he was being blamed for all of this. Then suddenly he noticed a miasma structure charging his way. The hero resorted to quick body in order to immediately escape. Just then, he was attacked by another beast that he slashes and kills immediately. As the hero felt relieved to see that the Legion soldiers disappeared when killed, the plushie asked him to scatter the small fries and wait for the opportunity to attack. Haruto affirmed that this was his plan anyway as he charged himself up. With that being said, the hero quickly launched himself and began slashing the miasma beasts. The young man kept going on, pursuing his miasma carnage. Seeing how his past self defeated the Legion, the plushie assumed that he had jumped 3 levels. And just as our hero was trying to catch his breath, wondering if the small dragons were all slain, he suddenly laid eyes upon the Chaos Dragon, who was charging a powerful attack. The beast then fired its powerful breath onto our hero, who was left utterly alerted. And so he tries to dodge. Upon connecting with the ground, the attack resulted in a great explosion. Yet just as our hero felt relieved to have escaped the first blast, the Chaos Dragon began to prepare another one. Seeing this startled the young man, who tried to make a run for it. The blast resulted once again in a terrifying explosion. This left our hero in a challenging situation, seeing how he had used most of his mana fighting the Legion, and so he decides to wait a few moments before using all of his strength once again, as he was determined to take out its weak point, which was its core. Suddenly, the monster got off the ground, leaving our hero confused. He was then left shocked as his stuffed animal pointed out how their target had gone out of their range. With that, the hero began to panic as he searched for a way to fight. He then began to scan his surroundings, wishing for anything that could help him. But just then, he noticed something that would allow him to counter the dragon. With that, future self asked his past self about his plan, seeing how this fight's difficulty was increasing by the second. When suddenly he was grabbed by the face, the protagonist decided to take the stuffed animal with him. He began to execute his plan. The plushie affirmed that no matter how much attitude he gained, he couldn't reach the dragon. Yet our hero was well aware of that. With that being said, he threw the plushie towards the dragon, before resorting to his stop chains in order to stop it mid-course before using it as a stepping stone, in order to launch himself at the dragon, leaving the plushie utterly confused. Then use stop chain once again in order to prevent the dragon from switching to its miasma form. Upon binding the dragon, the hero began to think of how he wouldn't be able to contain it for long. Yet in the case of his plan, realized that this detail was pointless. Just like that, Haruto went for a thrust, finally allowing him to strike the dragon's core as the chains were about to crack. Our hero used all of his strength in order to crack the crystal before his time was up when suddenly the binds broke. But just then, our hero was able to pour his power into his last attack. The overwhelmed dragon was left in great pain. Its core had finally been pierced. Just like that, a great explosion of energy occurred as the plushie fell on the ground. His sword was broken, but he managed to walk out. Haruto had won. The Chaos Dragon had been slain. Just like that, the winner, who earned 872,300 credits, had his level and swordsman skill increased. Our hero even acquired the Chaos Dragon Fang. Just then, this system urged him to visit the Adventurers Guild in order to refine himself to C rank. These great results didn't surprise the plushie at all. Yet it was still mad at the fact that Haruto used it as a mere stepping stone. But Haruto didn't pay it any mind as he carefully checked the status window. As all of his skills had been increased, including his passive skill that reached level 2, allowing him to unleash 50% of his true power. The plushie decided to forgive its present self, seeing how he saved everyone from a horrifying disaster, for pointing out how their fight had been reported. According to future Haruto, only misfortune will follow if they are discovered. This was one of the few times that both of them had the same opinion as they decided to flee. With that, the protagonist made his escape. That same night at our hero's apartment, as he unpacked some groceries, our hero suddenly remembered. He wanted to ask the plushie if it needed any food. It affirmed that the answer was pretty obvious and stupid, to which the hero responded by stating that a talking soft animal is even more crazy. Just then he remembered another thing, quickly got up from his seat, poured himself a cup, before greeting his family members, and asking the plushie not to mock him for doing as such. Yet the animated toy affirmed that it won't, seeing how they were the same person. Future Haruto decided to keep the truth regarding his little sister from his present self for now, as he planned to uncover it later on in his journey. Our hero then remembered that he obtained some new items, with one of them being the Chaos Dragon Fang. According to the plushie, this item came in just in time, seeing how his sword was on the dawn of breaking. Seeing how there was no school tomorrow, he proposed to our hero to go craft himself a new weapon. The next day at the Shinjuku Metropolitan Government Office branch of the Adventurers Guild, our once weak hero revealed that he isn't supposed to be here. Yet the plushie affirmed that he now had the right to stand proud, seeing how they were together. Upon hearing this, Haruto explained that they will head back home as soon as they finish what they came here for. Shortly after, in the reception lobby, an announcement was made asking the hero to approach the reception counter. Upon being asked for the reason behind his visit by the guild girl, the young man explained that he recently conquered a dungeon and that he wished to see his results. Despite looking like an average adventurer in her eyes, she accepted to help. She then asked him to hand her his adventurer's card. Upon entering it into the system, the card was activated. The guild girl asked the protagonist to place his hand on the window in order to verify his identity, which would allow her to see the results. And so after that, he placed his hand on the panel. The lady immediately began to check and was left stunned by what she had seen. She was amazed by the fact that our hero jumped 2 ranks in just a single day. Unable to believe that, she assumed that the system must be debugging. All looked at our hero, who was now placed in a tough spot, seeing how this incident could make him the center of annoying and unwanted attention. And so he decides to use the level 2 material rewind in order to get himself out of trouble. With that being said, he pointed out how the system had completed the identity verification. The screen revealed that he was an E-rank hunter. Haruto pretended to be confused and asked the guild girl if there was a problem. Yet she affirmed that everything was all right as she handed him back his card, unable to understand what just happened. The protagonist then took back what was his. The plushie had realized that its present self had used the scale solely on the screen. With that, it praised the boy for his cleverness. He pointed out how it was the plushie that asked him to avoid disrupting the timeline even further. The hero then asked his guide if they would be arriving soon, which the plushie confirmed before asking him to ride the elevator. After a small wait, the door was finally opened, revealing a place that one could only enter if he was a rank. Yet the plushie affirmed that this didn't matter. And so future Haruto began to transform, regaining his appearance as a letter. It then asked the confused boy to place it on the scanner. Our hero affirmed that this place had very tight security, yet the letter didn't care. After placing it on the scanner, the door miraculously opened. Upon entering the facility, Haruto was left excited as they were here to create a weapon adequate for his magic. Upon entering, someone pointed out to our hero that he wasn't informed of a field trip occurring. This individual was sitting in the room working. The letter explained to the man how they weren't here for schoolwork, but to synthesize a new weapon. With that, the interrogator got up to his chest and asked if they were truly adventurers. The chief of the laboratory, Shirayama Tokumune, wondered if they were truly above B rank. Yet the man could only perceive our hero as a mere F rank who got past security, so the letter urged our hero to showcase the material. So he pulled out the rare dragon fang and explained that he needed to create a weapon. Seeing how it was dropped by a powerful enemy, the laboratory chief decided to take a look and was impressed by it. Before asking the hero if it was something truly coming from an opponent that he defeated, which he confirmed. With that being said, the man pressed a button on his watch in order to commence the crafting. Just like that, the trap door on the floor opened, revealing the most futuristic synthesis device in the country, which could also be considered the Zenith, created by otherworld knowledge. The chief then explained that this material wasn't present in the database, which is why he would create the weapon for free, as it was a chance to study it before leaving. With that, the letter decided to help the young man with the weapon crafting, seeing how it was his first time. Hermundo was rendered clueless about the matter, seeing how this course could only be taken by those who had graduated from C rank. According to the time traveler, this process was divided in 4 parts, with the first being selecting a base for the new weapon, thus the Academy sword here. The second part was to select the attributes that would be powered into the weapon, whose number depended on its quality. And since the Academy sword was of the lowest rank, our hero could only give it one attribute. The third step is to select the material that would be fused with the weapon, which could be minerals, herbs, or even bones. The letter then explained that 2 weapons could sometimes be combined into one. The used material was the fang dropped by the dragon, and the final step is to begin creating the weapon, which was influenced by the duration of the forging. After finally explaining that the power of the weapon would depend on those 4 steps, and seeing that the hero understood it all, he decided to begin the operation. The base was selected as the Academy sword. Yet when it came to attribute, the future variant was shocked to see only 5 available, and so he opted for the light option. The next step was now to place the imbuing material into the machine. Just like that, the Chaos Dragon Fang had been placed. Yet when it came time to place the duration of the forging, Haruto was shocked upon being advised to place the duration as 3 years. But in the end, he decided to agree to the letter's request. With that began the forging process, which was supposed to take 3 years, when suddenly the letter jumped out of our hero's pocket and infiltrated the machine. With that, future Haruto began to hack the device. A bright blue light came out of the weapon's chamber, and after an energy explosion, the weapon had been completed. Just like that, the A-rank Chaos Sword, which was imbued with the power of light, was created. This little acceleration drained quite a lot of the entity's power, while the young man was left amazed. The laboratory chief was completely blown away as a very long process had been completed in less than a minute, and so he accessed his data swindle in order to discover what really happened. Seeing this, our hero decided to exit the building as fast as possible, storing the item in his storage. With that, the protagonist made his way to the exit while the scientist desperately tried to stop him. Upon getting out of the building, our hero stumbled upon some gossip regarding someone referred to as Anan. The 2 men were discussing how this person was a fearsome rookie who had slain the dragon alone, while wondering about his true identity, as well as being certain that clans would go to war with each other in order to recruit him if his name was ever known. One of them then revealed that he wished to be scouted by the S-rank Lumika, yet his friend affirmed that this was impossible due to his miserable rank. Upon hearing the rumors about himself, the hero was determined to go back home. Yet the plushie affirmed that they needed to go test the sword first, leaving the protagonist intrigued about their next destination. So his future self revealed that they would be going towards the sacred beast Cerberus, leaving the hero totally baffled. But just then, he was approached by his childhood friend Shinano. The girl revealed that she was thankful to see him alive, seeing how her friend was rumored to have been followed by the Chaos Dragon, and considering how he didn't reply to her messages, nor did he bother to come to school. The girl grew worried sick, and so he asked her about the reason behind her presence at the guild. Rin Shinano explained that she came here in the name of the school in order to apply for a student dungeon raid. Just then, the hero remembered that she was the best of the second years, which clearly justifies her alibi. The plushie then told him to cut the conversation short and resume his way. The childhood friend dropped tears of happiness upon seeing her friend being unharmed. Seeing this, Haruto had no choice but to apologize for the trouble that he caused her. But just then, she noticed the stuffed animal on his back and quickly found it adorable, and so she snatched it away in order to have a better look. Rin Shinano was pleased to see that the plushie shared the same scent as our protagonist. This odd scenery sparked an idea in the young man's mind. To the stuffed animal's shock, the boy explained to the girl that she could borrow it, seeing how much she liked it. This left the girl feeling thankful as our hero went on his way, being relieved to have found a way to distract her from himself. As Rin Shinano waved goodbye, the future variant urged his younger self to come and get him. A day after at the academy, Haruto tried to comfort the plushie by explaining how he immediately went to grab him back. But the stuffed animal explained that this wasn't the problem, before thanking his younger self for giving him a chance to spend time with his childhood friend that had died a decade ago. And just as they made it up, a shady figure seemed to have recognized our hero. The young man decided to make the protagonist his next prey, and hoped that he could amuse him, seeing how he was the one that had slain the dragon. Later on in the student council room, the vice president Sakurakuji Yuzuki asked the space-time mage if he truly didn't have a clue about what happened. Haruno affirmed that he had no idea what she was talking about. The vice president explained how on the day of the attack, Haruno fled in the same direction that the mighty beast was heading according to her intel. So the young man explained how the monster suddenly targeted another student as its prey, and that this individual was the one who had slain the dragon. Upon hearing this, the suspicious Yuzuki questioned the hero about the name of the said student, and he claimed that he was too terrified to notice who he was, which convinced the vice president somewhat. With that being said, our hero decided to head back to class while she desperately tried to stop him. Haruto was intrigued seeing how he was being treated as a suspect, so his future self pulled out a tablet and explained that this might be the reason. To his shock, his footage of the fight with the dragon had been leaked over the internet, which made him wonder if there was a way to use their magic to suppress it. Yet to no one's surprise, the plushie affirmed that it was possible, but the young one's current power level wouldn't allow it. With that, the disappointed main character entered the class. He then quickly noticed that he was once again the object of his comrades' gossip, and despite being always avoided like usual, he couldn't help but feel that something was off. When suddenly he was approached by his childhood friend urging him to escape the class. But the man in white affirmed that she didn't have to explain anything now. The president of the student council, Sumeraji Ryuga, who was a third-year student, declared that he would be the one to enlighten the god of plagues. After presenting himself and claiming to be the prodigy that rules the school, as well as being its strongest mage, the one in white asked our hero if he was truly Kuju Haruto, which our protagonist confirmed. Sumeraji Ryuga revealed that he was here to demand a magic duel, and just as he finished announcing his demand, whispering suddenly began to be heard. As all were certain that Haruto was bound to lose, tension began to rise between the two of them, as the president of the student council explained how someone magicless like him destroyed the measuring mirror, and that a mysterious material was found at the scene. But this wasn't all, seeing how the hero had single-handedly slain the Chaos Dragon. And while the young man was getting excited, our hero was left baffled, seeing how the third year knew so much about him. Haruto was feeling alerted upon hearing Sumeraji Ryuga declare that he wanted to cut his journey at its beginning. The president then claimed to also be a dragon slayer, and that he requested this duel in order to see who deserved this title the most. Magic duels were a concept created by the Adventurers Cultivation Agency in order to measure the power of the students. The results of the magic duels determine the pecking order within the school while granting the top students great privileges. Seeing how their position is assured in the Adventurers Guild after graduating was the only rule, one of the rules being that no casualties or permanent injuries were allowed. Usually, the student of the lower rank has the freedom of challenging any upper rank that he desired. The one with the highest rank was forced to accept the request of the lower one. But this also meant that he had the choice to decline the demand of a higher rank, which pleased him, seeing how he didn't want to fight the strongest in school. Shortly after, he pointed at our hero's childhood friend and explained that she should review her relationships if she aims to be part of the student council next term. The president wanted to use this opportunity to explain the situation clearly to the girl. Rin Shinano was left horrified as Sumeraji Ryuga cracked an evil smile as he proposed a one-on-one private lesson to help her out. The overwhelmed girl had no choice but to accept. Upon witnessing what just happened, the hero turned to the president, suddenly stood up, and affirmed that he accepted his demand regarding the magic duel, which left his childhood friend amazed. The president was then left intrigued, seeing how his duel wanted to add terms of his own. The protagonist asked him if he would accept that the loser quits the school. Hearing this made the one in white crack a smile, before agreeing and affirming that there was no turning back now, leaving our hero more determined than ever. Later that day, our hero was called out for his boldness while having lunch by his future self, who pointed out how he is following his footsteps. But to Haruto's surprise, the plushie warned him about his adversary, making him wonder if he was an equal to the entity. The stuffed animal nodded, confirming our hero's doubt. Future Haruto then explained how this individual will become the leader of the Shinjuku branch of the Adventurers Guild and create numerous fire spells. Haruto then began to mock the student president upon hearing that he earned himself a seat among the 7 sages. The plushie then explained that the one who had a repulsive personality would have used this position in order to manipulate his female followers, making Haruto realize how much of a despicable being his opponent was. The plushie then pointed out that the young man was skilled at gaining the heart of the masses, and that he only slayed a dragon due to followers' intel, before explaining how exceptional he was at magic, and that his claim to be the strongest wasn't as empty as it seemed, making our hero realize what he got himself into. With that, future Haruto decided to look at his younger self's stats. The plushie complimented the boy on his quick growth, but just then it touched the screen as it decided to show the difference between their stats, leaving our hero confused. Just like that, the stats of his opponent were in front of him as his future self explained the power gap separating them. This function of the system left our hero amazed, making him wonder if this was truly part of his magic power, as he was still unable to believe the difference in power. Just then, he noticed a girl comforting her friend, who had broken down in tears. The girl realized that she would surely fail the mage course exam, seeing how she was suddenly unable to cast spells. Her friend affirmed that she shouldn't have any problem, seeing how she didn't do anything wrong during the spell casting. This made her wonder if accepting private lessons from the president was her only hope to succeed. Hearing this left our hero stunned. He then felt uneasy, as he pictured the president with his childhood friend, while the girl was talking about how it would be over quick after she strips and closes her eyes. Just then, he approached the 2 girls, who quickly recognized him as their classmate from the swordsmanship class. The protagonist affirmed that the girl was free to decline the president's offer, stating how he was determined to help her himself, then suddenly raised his hand, startling the girl. The hero then began to concentrate, thinking of how he was now able to visualize the inner flow of mana after the magic capacity measurement course. The scan revealed that the girl's mana circuit was overheating, and that it was clogged due to her chanting spells that far exceeded her abilities, which meant that he only had to clear out the disturbance in order to restore her mana flow. The student was then left intrigued as our hero asked her not to be startled, and so he resorted to his space-time magic in order to hit the girl and her QG points without giving her necessary time to understand. Upon seeing this, her friend immediately intervened, thinking that the boy was a threat, yet the swordsman asked her to try chanting a spell. The girl named Yuko nervously agreed. Just then, a wind spell had been activated. With that, the girl found herself once again able to use magic. This left her amazed as her baffled friend explained how her magic was now even more powerful than before. Just like that, Yuko found herself filled with unparalleled joy. Before thanking her humble hero from the bottom of her heart, Yuko was left relieved seeing how she didn't have to see the student council president anymore. Just then, her hero remembered his childhood friend. Later that same day, while exiting the school grounds, Haruto asked his future self if there was any way to quickly gain more power, pointing out how 3 days were separating him from his fight with the president. Our hero urged the plushie to point him to the best dungeon for farming and growing in order to give him a fighting chance against Sumereji Ryuga. The plushie, who expected such a question, had already a dungeon in mind as well as intel on it, so the young man asked him about its rewards. According to his future self, an immense amount of XP, new spells, the opportunity to try out a scale sword, as well as a new familiar to summon were awaiting him. Hearing this left our hero very pleased. Later that day, an Azabi-rang dungeon known as Crystal Labyrinth, where one should be at least level 65 to enter. The hero began to regret his words, upon seeing how many opponents he had to take on. His future self asked him about his opinion regarding the dungeon, which our hero ironically thanked him for. Just like that, Haruto was tasked with eliminating each and every one of the monsters, and so he charged up at the enemy forces in order to wipe them out, with a bright, determined passion burning in his eyes. 60 minutes after, inside a deeper part of the labyrinth, 3 individuals were fighting. The young adventurer tried to cut the Crystal Knight in half, only for his sword to snap, making him utter his shock. And so the mage asked him to take a few steps back, before launching Flame Jet at their enemy. And right as she assumed that she had won, the Dark Crystal Knight, which was a lifeless monster who was unaffected by magic attacks and slightly damaged by physical strikes, was rendered unscratched, left the 2 adventurers totally baffled. And just as the monster was about to strike him down, the sound of clashing metal suddenly sparked. The young man opened his eyes and was left amazed, seeing how a blade had connected with his target. Haruto arrived at the last moment and attacked the monster from behind. Just like that, the Dark Crystal Knight had been blown away. Seeing this left the adventurers relieved and thankful towards the one who saved them. Haruto then informed the both of them that magic beasts were abundant in this dungeon and that they should flee as soon as possible. This made the young adventurer ask the student what would happen to him, so he explained that in order to guarantee their escape, he had to stay back and fight while they ran. And so the adventurers began to make their escape, feeling deeply thankful towards our hero, who found himself to face off an army of Crystal Knights. The stuffed animal counted 89 monsters defeated by our hero, before pointing out that this wasn't nearly enough, which our hero knew very well. Just like that, the protagonist was urged to slay all the knights in order to access a new level. Haruto firmly grasped his scale sword and began wiping out his enemies. According to the future magician, the Crystal Knights were the richest target inside this dungeon XP-wise, and that farming them was the best way to level up, and how they were still a threat to our hero, seeing how weak he still was. With that being said, our hero concentrated his mana and used his chains in order to immobilize the knights, as the plushie explained how he was using the light attribute Chaos Sword, which would allow him to fight the monsters on par. The future Haruto urged his past self to take out as many soldiers as he could, but as he activated his skill, our hero affirmed that he would be wiping out every single one of them. The Crystal Knights found themselves being overwhelmed by his power. Just like that, he unleashed a powerful and devastating attack. But he wasn't done just yet, as he poured his heart into his blade in order to destroy the warriors of Crystal. But the knights weren't all defeated. Suddenly, our hero noticed a different type of warrior approaching him, and quickly realized that his new opponent, which was the Dark Crystal General, was strong enough to pass for a boss. With that, the both of them clashed steel. Seeing how he was about to be defeated by the monster's sheer strength, the young man decided to use the power of his sword, which suddenly began to glow dark before emitting a bright light. Our hero then concentrated its power once again, as well as combining it with swift footwork, in order to sneak past the monster, gather all of his power, and cut him in half with one swing of the Chaos Sword. Just like that, the Dark Crystal General had fallen. Our hero was left exhausted from the endless fighting. The plushie then decided to talk to him as he tried to fight off an army of countless crystal monsters. The entity pointed out how their type of magic was different from the normal one, stating how it didn't rely on magic capacity, but the chronos factor that dictates the very flow of time, and that didn't need any magic to be activated. Upon seeing the Dark Crystal Knights charge at him once again, the young man resorted to his tough chains in order to immobilize them. The hero then quickly sliced his enemies to pieces as his stuffed animal urged him to always be wary. Suddenly, he noticed a new opponent arriving. The Dark Crystal Mages had entered the battlefield. As the monsters began to prepare their spells, future Haruto explained to present Haruto that as a space-time user, he should always have the Chronos factor in mind even in the heat of combat. Just then, the protagonist found a magical attack a hair away from his face. As the entity urged him to control the flow of time, the hero resorted to his powers, making everything suddenly stop. The Dark Crystal Mage's attack resulted in a great explosion, yet our hero came out unharmed. And so began the confrontation between him and the army of mages. The protagonist decided to switch spells and concentrated his magic in order to attack his enemies with a powerful, devastating blue beam of energy. Just like that, all of the mages have fallen. This confrontation allowed our hero to understand the meaning behind the flow of time, and while the stuffed animal tried to act unimpressed, he realized that the protagonist was brighter than him, seeing how he used a chronor. Shortly after, the hero stabbed the Dark Crystal Knight's armor. Haruto found himself exhausted and victorious on a mountain made out of numerous defeated monsters. This battle allowed our hero to jump many levels. The protagonist then asked the plushie about their next prey. Meanwhile, in the deepest part of the B-rank dungeon, the sacred beast Cerberus, who ruled over the Crystal Labyrinth, eagerly awaited a fight. Shortly after, our hero found himself in front of the final door when he experienced a sudden headache. The stuffed animal explained that the space-time magic could cause damage to the mind if used with no interruptions, before asking the protagonist if he wished to retreat, which he quickly denies as he opened the door. Haruto was very much aware that he was on the clock. With that, our hero made his way into the heart of the Crystal Labyrinth. His future self explained that this dungeon boss possessed a sense of honor unparalleled to any beast, yet he warned him to always be wary around it. As this was the B-rank dungeon boss, Sacred Beast Cerberus, the stuffed animal decided to make it even simpler by describing its soul as the spirit of an old honorable warrior. The beast quickly realized that his soon-to-be opponent was suffering. Haruto was then handed a potion that is said to cure his headache. Our young hero was shocked to see the beast waiting for him to take the cure, making it seem odd in his eyes. According to the plushie, the monster had a wound on his right side that he should target. Just as he finished consuming the potion, he couldn't help but notice that the murderous intent of the beast suddenly returned. After realizing that it truly gave him the time to heal, the swordsman realized that he was now indebted to a beast. Cerberus then unleashed his magic and charged at our hero, yet the young man dodged at the last second. Haruto then quickly spotted the injury that his future self was talking about. The monster's constant chasing gave him a hard time when suddenly he felt alerted, as the crystal hound got hold of his blade. Upon seeing that he was being overwhelmed in a contest of strength, the hero quickly let go of his sword, before jumping into the air in order to avoid Cerberus's powerful jaws. Yet to his shock, he found himself being the target of the monster's magical breath. The plushie urged him to evade the attack, and so our hero waited for the right moment, before dodging the powerful beam at the last second. Haruto then gathered his magic in his fist and targeted the weak spot. Just like that, our hero obtained a clean hit on the monster. The crystal hound let out a fierce roar. Haruto then quickly placed a distance between the both of them. Just then, the stuffed animal recognized the technique that his present self used as the pressure point treatment that cured the girl. To the time traveler's utter shock, the protagonist just sealed the dungeon boss's wound. Haruto explained to the majestical beast that they were now even for the time that he gave him to heal himself, before pointing out how he wanted an honorable fight. The plushie couldn't believe it, affirming that the boy was going to get himself killed, explaining that such honor shouldn't be repaid by disrespect, and that his failure inside the dungeon would mean that he had already reached his limit. Just then, something was tossed. Seeing the chaos sword at our hero's feet made the stuffed animal realize that Cerberus was giving it back. The monster then nodded as a way to ask the boy to pick up his weapon. Yet he refused as he urged the majestic hound to engage. According to the protagonist, this wasn't a boss raid anymore nor a farming session, but a simplified match between him and the great beast. Seeing this left the plushie utterly confused. With that, Haruto charged at the dog, delivering the first punch, but it quickly counterattacked, knocking him into the air. The swordsman then used one of the crystal walls to regain his footing, before launching himself once again, and delivering a mean strike to one of Cerberus's heads. This powerful hit knocked the three-headed beast off its feet. Suddenly, our hero noticed that the monster was trying to go for a bite. Just like that, Cerberus grabbed our hero's arm, before slamming him into the wall, leaving him in great pain. Upon seeing this, the stuffed animal urged the hero to get back up on his feet, and quickly began to fear the worst upon seeing Cerberus charging up Tri-Breath Beam and aiming it at our hero. With that, the protagonist, who resorted to his power, decided to pour his very heart and soul into the rest of this fight. The attack was now ready. Just like that, the beams were launched at our hero. The impact was now imminent and resulted in great destruction. But just as the beast closed its mouths, the swordsman suddenly snuck up near it, hoping that his body could sustain a little more as he charged once again at the three-headed dog. With that being said, he bombarded his opponent with a mighty barrage of fists, but just then he felt a sudden pain in his bitten arm. The monster decided to take this opportunity to counterattack, but the protagonist clenched his fist while calling upon the fiery desire of victory within, before blowing the beast away with one punch. As the monster was left in great pain, our hero decided to seize this opportunity by charging at him. As he descended upon it with his talon, Haruto affirmed that this was his victory, as he managed to score a devastating hit against the great beast. Just like that, Cerberus was unable to fight anymore. Haruto then began to fade out of consciousness, wondering if he always had muscles for brains. I got it. Yep. With that, the B-rank dungeon had been conquered. Later on, our hero finally opened his eyes, only to see the talking plushie standing right above him, still unable to believe that he had miraculously won. Upon seeing that he had jumped 20 levels, our hero was left satisfied. He then noticed that he earned himself the space-time mage's robe that he would wear later, when suddenly he noticed the great beast above him. Cerberus then began to approach the protagonist, who was left startled. But as it began wiggling its tail, Haruto was left confused. Upon seeing how friendly it seemed, our hero reached out his hand and gently began to pet the three-headed hound. As the plushie pointed out how much the hound seemed to be comfortable around the hero, the young man wondered if this was truly a boss. Despite not having foreseen this outcome, the stuffed animal was satisfied with the result, seeing how they obtained the desired reward. The young man assumed that it was talking about the gear, yet it denied, stating that the real treasure of this dungeon was having the sacred beast Cerberus as a summon, before pointing out how the hound would officially become the hero's vessel upon consuming his blood. Upon hearing this, the hero quickly bit his finger, letting some drops fall into the monster's mouth. I like that. All right, genius here. The plushie then explained that our hero gained the power to summon the beast at will, and with that, officially becoming a vassal, Haruto had accomplished his main goal. The day of the duel had finally arrived at the high school of the Adventure Cultivation Agency. All began to gossip about our hero as he passed by them, yet he didn't mind the dirty tongues as he was focused on his goal. Just then, he was spotted by his childhood friend, who immediately asked about his last whereabouts, seeing how he was unreachable. Haruto explained that he had undergone a unique training for the duel. This left Rin Shinano intrigued upon seeing the pitiful state that he was in, yet upon seeing him use his magic to heal his own wounds, the girl wondered if this was truly her childhood friend. Meanwhile, the student council president was shocked to see that his opponent hadn't fled yet, and cracked a devious smile at the boldness of the young one for pathetically revealing himself to the public. Later on, the two duelists met each other in the hallway. Sumeragi Ryuga declared that they shall face off after school. Before asking our hero if he was certain about his decision, Haruno affirmed his desire to fight, making his opponent remind him of the condition that he himself imposed. The protagonist then recalled very well that they agreed on the loser quitting the academy. Yet the student council president declared that he didn't find it spicy enough. And so, with that gracious gesture of his hand, the young man proposed to add a ridiculous sum to their bet. Hearing this left the hero utterly shocked, as the masses instigated him to agree. This greatly annoyed the plushie, seeing how Sumeragi Ryuga was using the students to force our hero to agree to this condition, making him realize that he didn't change in those 10 years. The student president aimed to take everything from our hero, in order to make him his own servant. Rin Shinano tried to oppose the condition, yet our hero agreed. This left the one in white very pleased, as he exited the scene stating that he was excited for their match after classes. He then called out the girl for supporting the wrong side before affirming that he was impatient to start their one-on-one lesson, leaving her uncomfortable. Yet Haruno reassured her, and then affirmed that victory would be his. The classes had now ended. It was now time for the fight between the two students, but just as our hero made his way to the arena, he was left intrigued. Upon seeing armed goons claiming to be there to entertain him by the orders of the president, some more emerged from behind them and explained how they were each promised a big reward for hitting him. Yet since our hero didn't gratify them with a response, the man assumed that he was terrified and claimed that even if he started to beg, the beating wouldn't stop. Yet to their surprise, our hero was happy. Haruto was pleased to see that Sumeragi Ryuga was still using the same dirty plots, and it didn't surprise him. It was almost a pleasing routine. The protagonist affirmed that he could now vanquish him with a clear conscience as well as his servants who he just dared. This triggered one of the henchmen. Yet just as he was about to attack, his face was suddenly grabbed and slammed into the floor by our hero. The space-time mage was annoyed by his weakness and decided to fight them all simultaneously. Shortly after, in the arena of the Adventure Cultivation Agency, all were wondering about our hero's whereabouts. The president claimed that this was all a waste of time, seeing how the second year turned out to be all bark and no bite. He then turned to the referee and asked him if he would automatically be proclaimed the winner if his opponent didn't arrive in the next 60 seconds, which the referee confirmed. All began to congratulate the third year for his easy victory and for scaring off his opponent by his mere presence. Sumeragi Ryuga grew thrilled, thinking that his servant must have beaten the second year by now. Rin Shinano waited in the audience concerned, when suddenly, to everyone's shock, the arrival of Haruto was announced. The student president was baffled by his presence, yet the hero affirmed that there wasn't anything surprising, seeing how they promised each other to fight. Upon realizing that all of his henchmen were beaten, The pervert lacked the words to express himself. With that being said, our hero urged his opponent to start the duel, before turning to the referee and asking him to announce the beginning of their confrontation. After presenting each contestant briefly, the referee finally announced the start of the duel. Despite having a hard time believing that the young man beat all his henchmen, the frustrated student president decided to put an end to him by himself. Sumeraji Ryuga affirmed that he wouldn't be holding back, before charging up a powerful fire spell. Now at full power, he asked our hero if he was ready to suffer his wrath. Future Haruto quickly realized that their opponent was going for the high-level Hellfire grab, and so after finishing charging up, the young man launched his first attack. Sumeraji Ryuga, who went all out, couldn't care less if our hero died by his flame. Haruno realized that the fire spell was causing a disturbance in the flow of time, which could allow him to evade the attack if he concentrated. Upon seeing him dodge the first bullet, the president was left shocked. Just like that, our hero evaded every incoming fire attack, their caster utterly baffled. Yet just then a fire spell was activated from the floor. The young man quickly noticed it, and jumped out of the way. Shortly after, a powerful fire tornado surged from this exact spot. This left the student president baffled, as even his trap back didn't have any effect. But just then, he was left alerted as our hero prepared himself for a counterattack, and hit him with a chrono ray. Then the young man was slammed into the ground. Seeing this left the crowd baffled, as the president was losing to someone who shouldn't have any magic, while the overjoyed Rin Shinnon was left completely amazed, upon seeing how her childhood friend had grown since then. With that, our hero landed on the ground, and recalled how his adversary stated that he wouldn't be holding anything back. The president, now with a dirty coat, got back up and once more was filled with a burning rage. And so he charged our hero and forbade him from messing with him. The latter quickly recognized the attack as the close-range flame dragon Ardent Fist that involves a flame that incinerates everything on the spot. Upon seeing how Haruto had blocked and grabbed his fist, the president was overjoyed, thinking of how the attack detonates on direct contact. Yet just as he assumed that this was his victory, the protagonist suddenly tripped him, before slamming him into the ground and twisting his arm. This left the president feeling alerted, as he was now at the mercy of the second-year student. And just as he began to fear the worst, our hero decided to strike near his head instead. With that, Haruto affirmed that the third year had lost. Yet the tenacious one quickly got back up on his feet, filled with frustration, and treated our hero as a loser that was destined to fail. With that being said, he looked at his henchman for help. The time traveler quickly recognized that his present opponent was being supplied magic from outside of the arena, which was rather amusing to him, seeing how forbidden this move was. Haruto called out his opponent about the outside power that he received. Yet the third year just let out a laugh as he began to transform. Suddenly, class burst out of his shoe as he activated his strongest secret technique. A bright light appeared in the arena, followed by a powerful energy beam. The protagonist watched in disbelief, as a giant figure appeared in front of him. Just like that, the demonic flame incarnation had been activated, a form that turns the user into a giant using the power of many other mages. The letter pointed out to Haruto how regular attacks wouldn't affect this monster, which he was very well aware of. Shortly after, the second year found himself being the target of a fire breath that he dodged at the last second. Haruto then counterattacked with a chrono ray, yet to his utter shock, the giant monster was unscratched. With that, the president began to grow several firearms that he used to attack our hero. He then quickly began to dodge, when suddenly his back figuratively and literally hit the wall. Just like that, Haruto found himself cornered by the giant demon of lava, so he decided to read the flow of time, only to find that something felt off about a certain part of the chrono flow. Seeing how a small breach existed on the monster, this gave our hero the idea to widen the breach in order to achieve victory. But just as he was lost in his thoughts, the giant monster smashed him with its hand. Suddenly, a small card appeared on the giant's arm. To the president's shock, our hero used his sword to burst himself out of there, before quickly gaining some distance. The letter was left annoyed as our hero requested it to become a stuffed animal once again. With that, the annoyed time traveler decided to agree. President Haruto prepared himself while his future counterpart was left annoyed by the idea. Just like that, the stuffed animal was thrown into the air and stop chain was activated, allowing our hero to use the plushie as a stepping stone in order to gain the high ground on the giant monster. The second year then read the flow of time once again in order to relocate the breach. With it, he gathered all of his strength, before splitting the giant monster in half. Just like that, the secret technique had been cancelled as its caster was left baffled. Upon seeing this, Sumeraji Ryuga began to panic, unable to understand why the ongoing chant didn't restore the giant as it should. The president then grabbed our hero in a state of panic and demanded an answer. Yet just as he grabbed him by the collar, Haruto decided to punch him in the stomach. Just like that, as the president was knocked out, the young man turned to the baffled referee, who quickly announced his victory. Shortly after, the preparations of Rin Shinnon were done, and so began the celebration of Haruto's victory over the student council president. This flattering congratulation left our humble hero a little bit embarrassed. The girl then asked her childhood friend to do what he must, and so he shyly raised his cup, leaving them all overjoyed as they banged each cup. Just then, one of the girls expressed how happy she was that Sumeraji Ryuga was quitting the academy. So all of them began to badmouth him, seeing how he was a pervert who only talked money and turned the establishment into his own playground. The student then affirmed that even Rin Shinano, who was also relieved, was about to fall into his claws. Just then the girl turned to our hero and asked him about the prize money of the winner. Haruto explained how he forgot to collect it, leaving them all shocked, seeing how it was a small fortune. Yet as he affirmed that profit wasn't his goal, all were left moved and attracted by his heroism. Just then one of his childhood friend's comrades teasingly asked him about his relationship with Shinano, leaving them both, especially the girl, shocked. This made her burst out of cane for asking such an out-of-place question. Yet the girl only gave her a thumbs up and pointed out how the hero fought the student council president for her sake. With that, all turned their attention to the winner and pressed him to reveal what Rin Shinano was to him. Our hero struggled to reply, and upon seeing how much disturbing attention was on him, he decided to excuse himself for a bathroom break, leaving them all disappointed. Shortly after, the girls began to talk of how Haruto seemed to have suddenly grown up, seeing how recently he was considered the lowest of the school. This made his childhood friend think about this special date, as after it, the protagonist had always been there to protect her. Rin Shinano was certain that this shielding bond would last forever, seeing how she was the only one that knew about his great powers, recalling how he defeated the Dark Sentinel and saved her life. Meanwhile, at the bathroom as our hero washed his hands, he received a message from his childhood friend apologizing for her group's pressure on him and urging our hero to not mind them. Reading this drew a small smile on the young man's face. Our hero clenched his hand, thinking of how it's been so long since he attended such a dynamic event. Haruto was certain that he would never sit at a table with friendly faces ever again. With that, he was finally certain that fate wasn't sealed in marble. But just then, the plushie approached him. Haruto affirmed that they would return home in a short time and urged him to stay discreet until then. Yet the stuffed animal revealed that it was a trivial matter, leaving his teenage self intrigued, as he affirmed that it was now time. The confused hero demanded an explanation. The plushie decided to reveal the reason behind its time travel. This left our hero shocked as the stuffed animal explained how his dead sister was still in the realm of the living, yet he was unable to believe it, seeing how Ria lost her life in an accident long ago. Yet the plushie affirmed that it wasn't the truth, an Instagram of reality. With that, the future Haruto urged his present self to be prepared, as they were about to go rescue her. Back then, someone drew our hero's attention. The young Ria presented him with a red scarf. The big brother pointed out how comfy the scarf looked and asked the little one if she was the one who made it. Ria joyfully affirmed that she created it with no one's help. The young man was pleased to see how overjoyed his little sister was. But just then, she presented her work as a present to him. This confused our hero as he didn't know if it would suit him. Upon hearing this, the little girl began to pout, assuming that her gift was unwanted. Yeah, her brother affirmed that this wasn't the case and that he really liked it. After cracking a satisfied smile, the little one wrapped the warm scarf around her brother's neck. Raya then claimed that her work had some defects. The little girl then explained how today was the 24th of December, and how this was his Christmas gift from her as she passed herself off as Santa Claus. Our hero, who finally understood the situation, expressed his gratitude towards his little sister. The little girl then proposed to celebrate Christmas on the 26th after her ballet recital, which her hero agreed to and promised to attend. With that, Ria was pleased and affirmed that her brother should get her a gift as well. Yet, this promise could never be fulfilled as she and his parents lost their lives in a plane crash, leaving him all alone at home. But just then, our hero snapped back to the present and found himself in the living room sitting with his plushie. He then turned his gaze towards his late family's photo as well as the red scarf. Haruto apologized and asked the plushie to explain once again. The stuffed animal urged him to focus, seeing how they were about to take on a mission where failure wasn't an option. But first, the protagonist demanded an explanation as to why his little sister didn't die back then, explaining how she couldn't have possibly survived, seeing how everyone else lost their lives in the plane crash. His future self asked him about his knowledge regarding the sad accident, so the young man explained how it stopped working mid-air due to a malfunction. The time traveler explained how it was a logical scenario for everyone, stating how this case was beyond present science, leaving our hero utterly shocked. According to future Haruto, a hole in the space-time continuum was opened in the sky that Christmas, and this was an interdimensional phenomenon he explained to his present counterpart. The where and when of the hole's appearance is still a mystery, even a decade from now. It had its own gravitational pull, which made the plane that flew around it that day unable to be controlled, leaving it to crash. Upon hearing this, the young man was left baffled, yet he still couldn't understand why his sister was the only one alive. The plushie then recalled how Raya's body was the only one missing back then, which meant that she had been swallowed by the space-time hole, unlike the others, to the brothers' amazement. According to the stuffed animal, the hole leads to a dimensional gap which had completely different notions of time and space, which meant that all those earthly years since then were mere seconds for the little girl. The stuffed animal then revealed that she will return to Earth as soon as the hole reopens, which was a lot to comprehend at once for our hero. The time traveler then revealed that he only came to help his present self, seeing how he didn't discover the hole fast enough to save his sister. And so as frustration began to build up, he urged his younger self to save their little sister. With that, Haruto grew more determined than ever, as he asked about the location of the hole that is yet to appear. According to the plushie, it will appear at the top of the Tokyo Tower, above the Sky Castle dungeon. As the awaited day arrived, past and present Haruto stood ready for the upcoming battle. The plushie expressed his surprise to see the young man buy so many items from the adventurer's shop. So he explained how all of this was possible due to his farming during their last trade. The stuffed animal then called out his younger self for wearing the red scarf at summer doors. Yet upon seeing how he only gave a vague response, the entity decided to drop the matter, and then explain how the entrance of the Sky Castle dungeon was on the top of the tower, along with how the space-time hole will reopen 300 meters above the peak of the dungeon, allowing Ria to get back to Earth. Yet if nothing is done, the little girl will die from the fall. Upon hearing this, the young man decided to put on his space-time mage robe. Now more determined than ever, he was ready to go rescue his little sister. Shortly after, the young man who tried to approach the tower was stopped by the soldiers, who explained how only licensed A-rank adventurers could currently enter, seeing how a dungeon had appeared on top of the tower. So Haruto decided to pretend to get away, only to opt for a shortcut. Just like that, the young man began to jump his way up the Tokyo Tower, and was left particularly annoyed as the plushie saw itself in him. Upon reaching the top floor, Haruto decided to peek inside. The plot shift recognized the tall, red-haired man as Kurogane. Seeing how annoying his plushie counterpart was, the young man assumed that he and him were acquainted. Future Haruto explained that this man was the current head of the Adventurers Guild Minato branch, and that he took his job way too seriously, and how he would inspect the perimeter just to see if any abnormalities occur. Yet seeing how they didn't have time for this, the hero decided to enter the dungeon at once, and so he pulled out his sword and broke the window, making a noise that attracted the man's attention. Kurogane urged the armed adventurer to go see what was happening. Yet to his surprise, nothing seemed abnormal. Just then, Haruto appeared right behind them, before striking him in the back of the neck in order to knock him out. Our hero then began to think of how he resorted to material rewind to quickly fix the window that he had broken in order to enter. With that came the time for the next step of his plan. The soldier then rushed to the chief in order to alert him of an urgent issue, claiming that an intruder too powerful for him to beat was found. Upon hearing this, the annoyed tall man decided to check it out himself, urging the rest of the forces to go with him. Yet one man stayed behind. Just like that, Haruto, who pretended to be one of them, had successfully fooled the Minato Adventurers Guild. With that being said, he decided to enter the dungeon and was left confused, seeing how this dungeon was bottom up. As the plushie explained how they needed to head down in order to go up, the young man pointed out how it was still a dungeon despite being in the air. According to the stuffed animal, this dungeon was themed after the paranormal, which meant that astral creatures would be their opponents. This amused our hero, seeing how he would be attacked by the undead in the middle of the bright sky of the day. Yet as he pointed out how his swordsmanship wasn't fit for the mission, the plushie asked him to not worry about it, recalling the attribute they had chosen when creating the Chaos Sword, which was light. Future Haruto affirmed once again that this very mission was the reason behind his time traveling. With that being said, our hero quickly made his way into the dungeon, only to notice something up ahead, which was a dark specter blocking his way. So he quickly resorted to his blade. In order to butcher it and resume his way, the stuffed animal urged him to listen carefully, seeing how no one had actually conquered this dungeon, seeing how it disappeared shortly after it spawned, yet he claimed to have some intel regarding it. According to the time traveler, this dungeon was made of 100 floors where they would meet fierce bosses every 20 floors, making our hero realize that he had to fight 5 bosses in these 100 floors. Haruto then decided to speed up the small monster killing, seeing how 4 hours had already passed. But just then, he was left shocked upon seeing monsters rising from the ground. Just like that, the young man found himself facing off against a colossal horde of zombies. All monsters charged at him at once, quickly overwhelming him. Yet just then, he summoned the great beast, that immediately began to tear through the zombies. With eyes as ferocious as ever, Cerberus appeared on the battlefield as his master explained how they would be speedrunning this dungeon. The young man found himself against a horde of zombies on the 5th floor, which the mythic beast that he was riding tore through easily. Haruto was pleased by the speed. The plushie explained that the 3-headed hound truly deserved his title of Sacred Beast, seeing how each of its attacks was loaded with holy power. With that being said, our heroes decided to keep on their quick advance. Just like that, Haruto, the plushie, and the summon began to conquer floor after floor until they reached the first boss's level. The young man was shocked to see Cerberus stop mid-course, when suddenly he noticed a small sphere of dark mass forming above a ritual circle. The plushie explained that he was about to fight the first of the 5 bosses, and that he would only be granted access to the next floors upon beating him. With that, it began to make its appearance, as black horses and a golden chariot could now be seen. The boss came out of the dark energy, making his landing onto the floor. From the carriage descended 3 presences. Just like that, Haruto found himself in front of the master, the lady, and the son of the fallen noble family. Our hero stood wary, seeing how he was about to fight 3 A-rank zombie monsters. Yeah, he didn't care about the difficulty, seeing how victory was the only way to save Ria. The plushie then warned him about the incoming attack, as the three of them came at him all at once. The young man urged the plushie to move away, making it realize that he was about to use something specific he purchased in the guild shop, which he confirmed, before activating his Eye of Time, allowing him to clearly foresee the upcoming fight. With that being said, the young man summoned his orichalcum knives and launched them at the charging fallen song. Yet the monster continued its course, unaffected, as it tried to slice off our hero, who quickly evaded, before jumping out of the way, in order to target the fallen lady. After filling her up with knives, he quickly noticed that the fallen master was charging at him, and so he launched another knife as a way to counterattack. But despite successfully stabbing in the heart, our hero had to tank a hit that blew him away. Yet he quickly got his hold of the ground back. As he managed to regain his footing, the protagonist was left pleased, as all was now in place. After installing a safe distance between him and the three undead, Haruto activated his power in order to detonate the knives. Just like that, a great explosion of energy occurred. The plushie explained how these knives were each very expensive and made from the strongest rare material from any dungeon, and how they exploded after being touched by electricity, before pointing out how his present self was detonating them so recklessly. The plushie assumed that he was using the unethical method of paying to win, and affirmed that the fight was still ongoing, seeing how he destroyed the flesh of the monsters, turning them into spectral opponents. The young man was very well aware of the edge that this type of monster had over physical attacks. He was also aware that ghost monsters also had their weaknesses, as he decided to resort to the light powers of the Chaos Sword. And so Haruto charged up ahead, concentrated his power in his sword, in order to unleash the attack Chaos Meteor upon his astral opponents. Just like that, the monsters had been incinerated by the light, making the hero's level as well as his swordsmanship increase in level, while also allowing him to earn more than 2 million credits. Just like that, the stairs leading to floor 21 had been opened. As he approached them, he urged his little sister to wait for him, as he was about to come and save her. Shortly after, on floor 40 of the Sky Castle dungeon, Cerberus used his powerful jaws to bite the monster, known as Lamia Undead Queen, the second boss of this dungeon. After successfully slaying it, the sacred beast rushed to his master, requesting to be praised for his achievement. This made the plushie point out how the giant hound was more of a pet than a summon. Our hero, who had defeated 2 bosses, was suddenly stopped by his future counterpart upon reaching floor 50. This left Haruto intrigued, as the plushie became certain of his theory. It then asked the young man to use Eye of Time on the wall in order to perfectly see what lies behind. The protagonist quickly obeyed, and was shocked to see a secret chamber behind the wall, as the plushie explained that none had entered this dungeon in his timeline. It had seemed that this time it would surely be cleared, as he turned himself into the letter asked to be placed in the gap within the wall. The hero quickly obeyed, and ordered his beast to stay put as the path had opened. Just like that, the young man made his way into the secret chamber on floor 50 of the Sky Castle dungeon. Haruto feared that this was once again a tricky plot from his future counterpart, yet the plushie affirmed that this matter was too serious to recklessly joke around. The Akashic crystal that allows one to unlock his hidden skills had been discovered. Just as the young man placed his hand on it, it suddenly shattered, allowing him to level up his quick body and stop chain, as well as obtain the new skills known as Avatar Replay and Gravity Beam. The young man's passive had also leveled up, allowing him to unleash 3/4 of his untapped potential. Upon seeing how Avatar Replay had been unlocked early, the plushie was left impressed, so the young man asked about its effect. Yet to no surprise, his future counterpart proposed to just test it while fighting. Now at floor 60, Haruto found himself in front of the third boss known as Zombie Beelzebub, before asking his guide about its weaknesses. The stuffed animal explained how this monster with that repulsing scent could fly, spit acid, and regenerate. Yet it didn't answer his question, as it was only describing it. When suddenly our hero felt alerted, as the monster charged at him at high speed, before immediately impaling him. But just as it seemed to be the end for Haruto, the young man began to disappear, shocked as the plushie explained how the boy got the chance to experience his new power in combat. The monster was left shocked as the young man he had just impaled was right in front of him unharmed. This was due to the effect of Avatar Replay. After seeing how the zombified insect charged at him once again, the young man decided to use his improved quick body in order to quickly escape death. He then firmly planted his foot onto the ground, before launching himself at high speed, as the plushie explained how Avatar Replay allowed one to create copies of their past self that were used as substitutes for the original. Just like that, by combining the two skills, our hero and his copies managed to surround the third boss of the Sky Castle. All Harutos then summoned the Chaos Sword and charged at the target, all at once, using simultaneously the skill Chaos Meteor. Upon seeing how it was overwhelmed, the giant bug decided to spit acid in order to destroy the copies. Yet to its shock, more appeared from behind the acid. Just like that, the third boss of the dungeon found himself getting attacked from all directions with light attacks. With that, Zombie Beelzebub had been defeated, marking our hero's victory. The plushie jokingly explained how the young man could now self-proclaim himself an injurer, yet the protagonist affirmed that it wouldn't fit his personality. With that, 3 bosses had been defeated. Yeah, just as the young man decided to make his way into floor 61, he was suddenly struck by a powerful headache that made him fall to his knees, before quickly passing out. 3 years before the main storyline, the hero found himself annoyed, as his little sister was begging him. Haruto seemed unsure, so Ria firmly affirmed that she wouldn't slack off and would see it through to the end. Upon seeing how much she was insisting on it, the hero decided to give up, and asked her if she was really certain about doing ballet, which she cheerfully affirmed, and so he decided to let her pick her favorite shoes before showing them to him. Hearing this left the little girl filled with an innocent joy. Seeing how happy his little sister was forced our hero to crack a genuine smile. Later that same day, at the ballet class, Ria joined the rest of her comrades. Her friends were happy to see her with them in class. She then turned around and waved at her big brother, making her friend tease her about being too attached to him and forcing Haruto to pamper her so much, leaving her embarrassed. The hero then watched the girl on her first day. Ria tried her best to imitate the others, and despite how difficult it seemed, she danced as gracefully as she could. Seeing how happy his little sister was, the young man couldn't help but feel joy himself. A little later that day, the little girl waved goodbye to her friends before going on her way. She then began to talk about how thrilling this day was, and how despite ballet being quite challenging, she wanted to see it through to the end. Just then, she realized that her brother seemed absent, and so she decided to stop, pointing out how the shoes and the lessons must be quite pricey. Iggy affirmed that this wasn't the case and asked her to pay it no mind. But as she pointed out how their parents were currently outside of the country for work, and that he must have used his own funds for her ballet lessons, the young man was left shocked, as the little one had figured it all out. Haruto explained that this wasn't something for her to be concerned about, pointing out how happy she seemed when she danced, and how happy he was to see her do something that she loves. Hearing this response moved the little girl's heart. Rhea then expressed her gratitude towards her big brother, who couldn't help but smile at her cuteness. Rhea tried to express how much she loved her brother and he wasn't comfortable doing it in public. Yeah, she affirmed that there wasn't anything wrong with it before declaring that she would do her best to cook him a delicious meal in order to showcase her love. Back to the present, the young man finally woke up near his summon, after the plushie greeted him. Haruto asked if he had lost consciousness, which it confirmed, pointing out how he had run out of stamina. He then decided to use his best stamina potion elixir that he bought at the shop to restore his energy, yet the plushie affirmed that it had already given it to him, pointing out how all of his wounds had been patched and he couldn't do anything regarding the burden of space-time magic on the mind. Suddenly, Haruto remembered that he was on the clock, so his future counterpart explained how 19 hours had passed. With that, he quickly got up to resume his way, as he was determined to attend his little sister's ballet lessons once again. Meanwhile, the plushie looked concerned, as he began to think of how only 2 bosses were left, and how Haruto would soon fall and break if this tireless race went on. When this time comes, the time traveler will have no other way but to use his secret weapon. After that, our hero arrived at the domain of the 4th boss, known as Asset King Money, on floor 80. The powerful monster was quickly slammed into the ground, as the young man resorted to his new skill known as Gravity Beam. Just like that, the 4th boss was defeated, allowing our hero and his swordsmanship to increase levels once again, while earning him more than 3 million credits. With that, the young man grew exhausted, as his beast watched in concern. Haruto then expressed his gratitude towards the 3-headed hound. The young man then used an elixir in order to recover some health. Upon seeing the pain that he was in, the plushie proposed to take a small break. Yet our hero affirmed that they didn't have time, as only 3 hours remained before the reopening of the space-time hole, and so he decided to resume his speedrun. Shortly after, the young man had finally reached the final floor. As Haruto pointed out how they were now in space, his future counterpart explained how after killing it, they would arrive at the exact location of the hole. With that being said, and their little sister in mind, past and future versions of the big brother decided to start the fight against the final boss. After entering the final room, the young man found himself in front of a throne, where Soul Reaper, the god of the underworld and the final boss of the dungeon, sat waiting. Just then, the entity opened its eyes and looked at our heroes. The plushie explained how they didn't have any intel on this boss in his timeline. As it got up from its seat, the monster pointed out how our hero was alone. Haruto was left shocked as his future counterpart pointed out how this monster was smart enough to be capable of speech. Soul Reaper then praised our hero for coming this far on his own, unlike the other humans who team up against their enemies. With that, both adventurer and boss summoned their respective weapons, and were now ready to face off. Soul Reaper affirmed that he was the ruler of the underworld, and that he would inflict the most lethal curse upon our hero. The plushie then claimed that his timeline knew about this monster's weapon, as it was the curse-commanding Divine Scythe, which possessed powerful illusion magic along with several debuffs, making it extremely lethal. Yet the young man couldn't care less, as he quickly located its weak spot, seeing how he was determined to slay it regardless. He then used his quick body in order to charge at the monster, who couldn't help but be shocked by his quickness. Soul Reaper decided to counter with his scythe, quickly hitting the young man before knocking him away. Haruto then launched himself into the air and prepared himself to strike the core. With that, he threw a dagger at it that the ruler of the underworld quickly blocked. Soul Reaper then jumped into the air, quickly closing the distance between him and the adventurer. before delivering a powerful slash that immediately struck his target. Yet to his shock, this was but a mere clone. Haruto used this opportunity to sneak behind the monster and hit him with Soul Chain, leaving him immobilized. But just as he was about to deliver the final strike, Soul Reaper affirmed that such vines could never contain him, before breaking himself free, leaving the young man shocked. As the monster prepared himself to counterattack, the young man found himself at its mercy. But just then, our young hero dodged at the last second, before quickly installing a distance between him and the monster. Soul Reaper called him out for his quickness, seeing how he had dodged his attack twice, before affirming that he was still an inferior being with no way to fly in the sky, and so decided to target Haruto's legs first. Soul Reaper then used Cursed Dimension on our baffled hero, who suddenly found himself on the ceiling and was shocked to now be bottom up, when suddenly the floor above him began to break, placing him in a difficult situation as he got sucked up into space, seeing how difficult it was for him to reach the top floor, yet now he was once again going back to Earth. Soul Reaper then affirmed that the young man had no way to dodge in the air before launching his attack, leaving our hero alerted. Upon seeing this, the young man summoned a dagger and realized that sacrifices were needed in order to win as he exploded it right after throwing it. Just like that, the young man managed to use an offensive skill in order to dodge the incoming scythe. Yet he also slammed himself into the wall in the process. Upon realizing what he had slammed into, the young man planted his blade into the wall in order to stop himself from falling. This maneuver left the monster intrigued. The young man decided to take a moment to retake his breath, thinking of how the shattered floor must be an illusion made by the boss monster, that he most likely cast it on him when he used this cursed dimension, yet he had no idea how to cancel the spell. Just then, our hero noticed that Soul Reaper was charging right at him, and then charged up an attack, before unleashing a powerful breath on our hero, who despite his best efforts to dodge, couldn't help but have his leg hit. Soul Reaper explained how the adventurer is now his newest lab rat regarding magic experiments, pointing out how the hate of the humans will devour his body. This made it wonder if he will die by his size or by the curse that he inflicted upon him. The curse began to progress. Despite the space-time mage's burning desire to cancel the spell, he had no idea how. Soul Reaper then gathered all of his power in order to charge our hero for one final attack. Seeing this, the hero had lost all hope of victory. In his last moments, he began to remember his sister that he once again failed to save. Yet just as the monster was about to finish him off, he was suddenly stopped by the level 78 stop chain. Haruto was left baffled upon seeing his savior, as it was none other than his guide, a plushie. The stuffed animal had decided to use his secret weapon. To the young man's shock, a toy began to glow as it began charging up with space-time energy. Suddenly, the stuffed animal chattered. Haruto was left shocked as a mysterious figure had now made its entrance. The man who unveiled his face affirmed that he would be greatly irritated to let him meet his doom in the Sky Castle. With that, future Haruto had finally made his entrance. The grown man then used All Things Rewind, leaving his younger self baffled, upon seeing the flow of time being reversed. With that, the falling rocks began to ascend. His sword was pulled out from the wall. The room itself began to be rebuilt. The initial hall then slowly began to close on itself. With that, floor 100 was restored to its original state, leaving both demon and adventurer utterly shocked. Soul Reaper had a hard time believing that the spell he had cast was undone. The man then landed on the ground, pointing out how he hadn't returned to his original form in a long time. Soul Reaper claimed that it didn't matter if he was against one or two humans, seeing how he would now be going all out. And so he decided to summon the zenith of his magic studies. Just like that, little creatures began to emerge from his dark magic. As the monster pointed out how it would judge the two of them for their sins, the grown man pointed out how it could summon monsters that were almost S-rank. He then urged his present self to get back on his feet and to slay the final boss while he takes care of his henchmen. Hearing this left the young man shocked. The Grand Spacetime Wizard explained how powerful this monster was. Yet his younger self shouldn't mind it, seeing how he had acquired the necessary skill and knowledge to defeat it. The wizard then affirmed that they were one and the same. Just like that, past and present Haruto stood next to each other. The future one then decided to unveil his plan to his teenage self and began to whisper in his ear in order to keep it a secret. Soul Reaper then launched the signal, ordering his minions to slay the humans. Yeah, just as they charged at them, a blue flash of light occurred. Teenage and adult Haruto each dashed in a separate direction. Some of them began to follow the grown man, who suddenly turned to face them and activated gravity territory. He then taunted the monsters to attack him, before blowing them away. Meanwhile, Present Haruto was facing the same problem as well, but his future counterpart quickly took care of it for him. The wizard then cast sped-up fuel on the young man in order to give him a boost. After firmly planting his feet on the ground, the protagonist launched himself at the disgusted monster, only for it to use Cursed Dimension once again. Yet the hero, who had already experienced it, managed to break through the spell, leaving its caster utterly baffled. With that, the determined young man continued to charge up ahead, leaving Soul Reaper utterly irritated. According to Haruto, a head-on strike was the best way to deal with this monster and save time, thinking of how its weakness was its heart. And after clashing a few times with the monster's scythe, the young man decided to use Chaos Meteor in order to pierce him. Soul Reaper was left in great pain. Now angry, he used Curse Edge to attack our hero, an attack so quick that Haruto was unable to dodge it. But just then, the young man used Avatar Replay in order to equally divide the taken damage between him and his clone. With that, the protagonist charged ahead once again, gather all of his strength in order to pierce the monster's heart in one last thrust. The young man targeted this area as it was the weak point of the monster. Seeing how it began to scream in panic, the young man assumed that he was victorious. Yet to his shock, Soul Reaper suddenly cracked his smile. As it turned out, the god of the underworld was heartless. The young man was then hit by the divine scythe. The wizard watched in horror upon seeing Soul Reaper split his younger self in half, while calling them out for assuming that his heart was his weak spot. The monster then explained that he had a skill as the god of the underworld that allowed him to fool humans with a fake weak point, and then began to laugh madly as his opponent fell into two parts to the ground. With that, as it summoned its henchmen, the monster dared the remaining human to attack him. As future Haruto began to complain about the weak point, Soul Reaper explained that something like him had no weaknesses, and that if he had one, it would be the forbidden crown of Hades on his head. The monster then launched his minions at the wizard, affirming that it wouldn't be showing a mercy. Yet the grown man affirmed to his younger self that they were now aware of the true weak spot. To the monster's shock, the boy stood right behind him. Soul Reaper was unable to understand the sudden appearance, so Haruto explained how the one that it had killed was a fake. The cursed clone then began to fade away. The protagonist explained how he created a copy of himself after being hit by the monster, and that was the fake one that attacked it, while the real body lay down on the floor. It has left the monster even more confused, seeing how a hit from his divine weapon was lethal. The young man affirmed that he wouldn't have survived if he hadn't already been under the effect of rollback. Haruto explained how he was rewound to his healthy self seconds before his death, while his future self explained how complicated this skill was. Soul Reaper tried to get the boy off his back, but was quickly rendered paralyzed by the stock chain of the grown wizard. With that, the young man decided to put an end to this fight. Both space-time wizards began to recall how the monster revealed that his weak point was his crown on his head. With that, they were rendered determined to completely annihilate it. The protagonist then began to recall the warmth of his dear little sister, now more determined than ever to fell the underworld for the sake of his sister, before using all of his might in order to cut it down. With that, both the crown and the skull were reduced to pieces. The main body fell to the ground, as the summons began to disappear. In the end, only the young man stood. Upon defeating the final boss, he earned himself 124,000 XP along with more than 35 million credits. Just like that, the protagonist was rendered victorious. As the stairs appeared, the future wizards stated that they should now head towards their main destination. Our hero quickly agreed. After taking a look at the grown man walking beside him, the teenager asked if he will also look like this after becoming an adult, leaving the time traveler annoyed by this disappointment. Haruto then called out the man for not revealing his true self and helping him at the beginning of his journey. Yet the future variant explained that there was more to this form than it seemed, which is why he didn't want to use it from the start, before suggesting to cut the small talk, seeing how the space-time hole would be opening soon. With that, the wizard urged his younger self to go at once. Shortly after, the both of them had reached the top floor of the Sky Castle dungeon. Just then, the grown man spotted the space-time hall opening. Inside it, a small figure could be seen, which was none other than the hero's sister. As they gazed into the hole, the older one explained to the youngest how they had 10 minutes before the hole closes. Yet when he flew right ahead, the present version got his attention. The future one remembered that his younger self isn't able to fly yet, and so he created a path for him using sped-up field. With that, both Harutos made their way to the space-time hall, where the little girl was trapped. Our hero quickly called her. Rhea immediately recognized her big brother. The young man tried to reach her. He was held back by his older self, who explained how only their magic could be used to get her out from this breach deprived of any earthly principle. The time traveler then explained how he would get inside the breach in order to push her out, leaving his younger self to stop her from falling. After entering the space-time hall, the man resorted to his magic in order to push the girl out. Haruto stood ready to catch Rhea. The little girl had a hard time keeping up. Just as the boy prepared himself. The breach in the space-time continued and began to get smaller to his shock. His future counterpart pointed out how odd it is, seeing how the hole should still be open for much longer. As it was about to close, he was left stunned, when suddenly it got reopened. The grown man, who used his power to prevent the hole from closing, urged the young one to get their sister out of here using his magic. So Haruto focused his magic and began to pull her to his side. His future counterpart explained how they had to succeed, seeing how the girl could easily fall to her death or be shredded to pieces if the hole closes on her. With that, the protagonist was urged to get Rhea, which he finally managed to do. Just like that, brother and sister shared a hug for the first time in 2 years. The young man then urged his future self to quickly escape the hole. It was left confused upon seeing him stay inside. The time traveler explained how this is where their paths separate, and how he was unable to maintain his human form upon releasing all of the Chronos factor within his body in order to keep the hole open to the young man. Haruto was left shocked as his guide explained that he had no energy left to escape the space-time bridge. The time traveler then claimed that his younger self was about to still whine all the time and made basic mistakes, and how he was someone that would throw all his growth and progress away due to an emotional burst. He revealed that fighting alongside someone as kind as him was an honor, and so he bid the teenager goodbye as this hole will remain forever closed. The young man tried to pull him out, unable to accept the cruel reality. With that, the time traveler left his dream on our protagonist, urging him to save the world in his place. Upon hearing this, the hero was left shocked, gathered all of his strength in order to prevent himself from crying, as he accepted the time traveler's last demand. The man was then left pleased before turning his gaze to the little girl and explaining how she was no longer in danger. But to his utter shock, the little Rhea managed to recognize him as her sibling Haruto. Upon hearing this, the man began to remember his sister in his original timeline. With that, he welcomed the little one last time with a genuine smile, before dissipating in the little space-time continuum. Just like that, the hole closed forever. The young man, who was overwhelmed by emotions, began to cry his heart out, as despite having regained his dear little sister, he had also lost his cherished master. A day after saving his little sister at high school, the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, our hero's arrival was awaited. To his shock, 5 girls all rushed at him. Haruto was surprised to see the last year students approaching him. One of them thanked him on her and the delegation of the Student Council President's Victims Association behalf. All expressed their gratitude towards the protagonist. The girls then began to talk about how relieved they were that they didn't have to worry about the pervert that the president was anymore. One of them declared the protagonist as their hero, pointing out how unfair it was to title him God of Plagues. The young man wanted to stop the flattery as he only aimed for a humble life. Suddenly, he was approached by Sakurakuji Izuki, the vice president of the student council. The lady then apologized on behalf of the student council for all the trouble that the president made Haruto go through. Yet the protagonist affirmed that apologies weren't needed, seeing how she wasn't at fault. Yet the lady affirmed that she must atone, seeing how she was soon to become the head of the student council. Haruto was then left confused as he was offered a job to help the school. Sakurakuji Izuki explained how she needed new recruits for the student council, and that she would like to make him the head of the mage security guards. All were amazed by this great offer, except our heroine, who immediately declined to the vice president's utter shock. Yet she didn't drop the matter as she began to beg him. Meanwhile, his childhood friend watched from afar as her comrade tried to calm her down upon seeing the vice president near him. Just then, one of the vice president's friends affirmed that break was almost over. Sakurakuji Izuki used her new position to command the young man to wait for her in his classroom during lunch break. Shortly after, on the roof, our hero decided to check his status window and was once again quite amazed by his stats. Haruto even claimed that he was invincible with everything that he had acquired. According to the young man, this progress shouldn't be surprising, seeing how he had gone through Sky Castle Dungeon and its 5 bosses. He had also acquired an impressive number of credits, which were a sum too important for a mere student to possess, when suddenly, a familiar sound attracted his attention. The new president rushed to the roof searching for him. Yet to their shock, they couldn't find our hero there. The annoyed Sakurakuji Izuki was irritated by the fact that her order was ignored, while one of her comrades proposed to search the gym next. Meanwhile, our hero ate his sandwich, while watching them from above. The young man realized that he needed to find a solution if the student council would keep on following him. He then turned to someone for suggestions, which was the talking plushie, who wasn't here anymore. Remembering that the sarcastic presence was now gone. Later that day, our hero climbed the stairs to his apartment. With groceries in his hand, he opened the door. Haruto was left shocked upon seeing his sister complain about him coming home late. With that, the little one greeted our hero. The young man took some time to process the joyful situation, before greeting his dear Rhea back. An exquisite meal was prepared. Rhea took pride as she presented the meal that she made to Haruto, who was left amazed. Just then, the little girl noticed the bag in his hand. Our hero had picked up the habit of buying such things from the grocery store. Rhea then began to scold him, seeing how he should only buy necessities, before explaining how they needed to save some money, seeing how they were now 2 living in this house. Hearing this drew a smile on the hero's face as he agreed with his little sister. With that being said, the little girl warmly welcomed her brother. This left him shocked, as it reminded him of his master's last words. The young man affirmed that he felt great being home. Just then, the little girl remembered to do something before eating. The 2 siblings addressed their dead parents, thanked them for everything, and asked them for their guidance. Haruto was pleased to see how kind his little sister was. Just then, she noticed the last gift she had made for her brother. She was amazed to see that he kept it with him these 2 years. Yet, the young man affirmed that it was only natural that he did. Rhea affirmed that it was now summer. Yet, the hero claimed to be very sensitive to cold. Shortly after, the young ones began to eat their meal. Rhea was very proud of herself to have cooked all this food. After that, Haruto took a single bite. The young girl eagerly awaited his reaction and was very pleased to see that the meal was to his taste. Our hero then revealed that he had given the government the necessary papers regarding his sister, claiming that they were wrong about her death, leaving her thankful. Rhea vowed to work as hard as possible in order to catch up on all the study time that she had lost while in the space-time hole. Her brother then explained how she also had to focus on her ballet lessons. This intrigued the little girl, seeing how they needed to save money, yet the young man affirmed that it wouldn't be necessary, and that she didn't have to be anxious about it, seeing how they could now finance her ballet courses even after she has grandchildren. The young girl had a hard time understanding her brother's corny sense of humor. Before turning her gaze to the plushie and pointing out how everything was due to the time traveler, her brother affirmed that they should always be thankful for his sacrifice. Upon recalling how the future Haruto had tasked him with saving the world in his place, the young man began to wonder about how to actually do that. Raya then recalled how she found something in her outfit after escaping a hole. As she placed the blue construct on the table, she asked her brother if he had any knowledge about it. The protagonist was shocked, as this was a message cube, when suddenly it was activated, revealing a hologram of the future Haruto in his plushie form, leaving the young man amazed. The plushie began to explain how he must have met his demise if this message has been discovered, and how his younger self must not have any idea on how to fulfill their promise. The young man was left shocked at how accurate this message was. The stuffed animal then claimed that he had made the necessary preparations for after his death, seeing how he was the greatest of the mages. Before babbling about his own awesomeness and how he was worthy of compliments, this left the protagonist a little bit weirded out, seeing how smug his future self was in his message. But was then left intrigued as his plushie counterpart explained how he left a letter from the future version to him inside his storage. The stuffed animal affirmed that this letter was the key to saving the Earth. With that, our hero acquired the item known as Letter F for becoming a Spacetime Mage version 2. This left the young man utterly shocked. In the end, the plushie asked him to work hard even if he is not here to supervise him. After taking one last look at his mentor, our hero let out a genuine smile. His sister was intrigued, as in the message the stuffed animal had called him a savior. This stunned her with amazement and made her admire her brother even more. The young man tried to explain that it wasn't the case and that it was complicated, yet upon seeing how intrigued she was, he had a hard time explaining it. Meanwhile, at the general headquarters of the Adventurers Guild in Marunouchi, Tokyo, on the highest floor where the 7 sages have their meetings, the chief of the Minato branch, Kurogane, also known as Iron, decided to aboard the next subject, as according to him, the death of the Chaos Dragon, the conquering of Sky Castle Dungeon, as well as the illegal entry of the Weapons Synthesis Lab, had all been committed by the same person, whom they must discover the true identity of. Sage 5, who was known as King of Kings, theorized that the said dungeon must have been equal to an S rank. This left Sage 2, Oracle Deliverer, who was known as Platinum, amazed as such a dungeon had been cleared by a single person. Yet the exalted magic swordsman Kiryu Muramasa, who was Sage number 6, explained how this wasn't likely. Meanwhile, the third sage, Triple D, who was named Oz, began to reflect on it all in silence. This matter greatly captivated Omni Elemental, who was the first sage named Q, as it could be seen as a challenge to the power of the guild. Meanwhile, the fourth sage, who was known as Siren the Psychic, was left wondering what kind of malice the infamous culprit had in his heart. Yeah, the last sage, Tellurium, who was known as Akashic Vision and who spoke in a robotic voice, decided to study their mysterious man. With that, Iron explained how every one of them grasped the main idea regarding the mysterious adventurer, and how they should make him join the Adventurers Guild as soon as he is discovered, in order to use his power in the soon-to-be Otherworld War. With that, the meeting of the 7 sages came to an end. And then, after the said meeting, a little girl holding a balloon was happily walking with her mother. Yet, as the mother stopped by in order to admire the flowers on sale, the little girl then spotted a blue butterfly and was immediately captivated by it. And so she began to follow it on the road, when suddenly a speeding truck appeared. The driver was shocked to see a little girl in the middle of the road. The distracted mother then turned her gaze to her child in danger and was left horrified. She then begged her child to get out of the way. But it was too late and the little one had nowhere to escape. With that, the balloon had popped as a bloodstain appeared on the concrete. Just then, spacetime magic took effect, leaving the mother intrigued. Right in front of her, along with her daughter that he had saved, the woman rushed to check on her child. Haruto, who understood how terrified the little lady must have been, reassured her that everything would now be okay. With that, he placed her back on the ground as she thanked him. The relieved mother then hugged her child, seeing how she was now safe. Our hero was pleased to have rescued the girl in time, as upon noticing the truck, he assumed that he was unable to help her. Yet his spacetime magic made it possible, and aside from losing the girl's balloon and drink, it was pointless seeing how she was now safe. Our hero felt glad to have helped someone using his own strength. The lady explained how she would properly show her gratitude, yet the young man explained how she wasn't forced to. Yet the lady insisted on thanking him before asking him about his name. Yet the protagonist refused to give it, seeing how he wanted to stay as discreet as possible. With that, our hero resumed his way, and decided to speed up, seeing how it was almost time. Shortly after, our hero began to jump on the roof of the division of the Adventurers Cultivation Agency. After arriving at his destination, the young man looked down on the entrance, only to find the student council looking for him. Haruto was pleased to see that he had escaped them once again. Later that day, while in class, as the students were whispering to each other, The young man could tell for a fact that all were talking about him even without resorting to his magic. Meanwhile, his childhood friend began to think that he was now in a league of his own, just like once she stumbled upon him while leaving the Adventurers Guild. In the past, in the Metropole and Government Office of the Adventurers Guild in Shinjuku, a student claimed to be from the Cultivation Agency School in Nakano, which was none other than Rin Shinano, signaling the end of her B-ranked dungeon exploration. Yet as she made her way to exit the office, the man was left intrigued by the location of her school. The man asked her if one of her comrades was named Sikuju, leaving the girl shocked as she confirmed. So the man explained how the chief of the weapons synthesis laboratory had come up with a theory regarding weapon crafting that was given this very name. The girl was shocked as it was revealed how a student from Nakano was the one that helped him come up with that theory, which sounded foolish to the man. And this left Rin Shinano to think, wondering about the extent of her childhood friend's growth. Class was then ended, yet one of the students decided to talk about the exchange student that would arrive next week. Meanwhile, at lunch break, our hero sat alone on the roof, gazing at the letter that was given to him by his future counterpart. The letter explained how space-time magic was just a means for support, and that our hero's true power would lie in his swordsmanship skills, and then began to vanish, assuring the young man how he would one day understand why he was asked to focus on his swordsmanship. Haruno realized that his late master was as enigmatic as ever, seeing how he didn't explain much. Suddenly, a young man set foot on the school grounds, and immediately activated his skills, flash stride, and stealthy steps. With that, he began to move in the blink of an eye. The protagonist was suddenly left alerted, as he noticed a presence standing on the roof, so he quickly summoned his chaos sword and asked the intruder to unveil his identity. Yet the one in white, who had recognized him as the Anon, stated that he was here to seek his help. After turning to face him, the one with glasses affirmed that their world as they know it was on the brink of death. As the young man affirmed how they wanted to use the Anon's power, our hero was left alerted, seeing how he could only sense the one in white. After that, he approached him. He wasn't a normal hunter. Haruno demanded an explanation regarding his claim about the death of the world. Yet the young man affirmed that there was nothing to explain and that everything and everyone our hero loved would meet its demise. This left him shocked as he remembered his little sister, yet he refused to believe it, seeing how he didn't know anything about the one in white, seeing how he suddenly appeared out of nowhere and began to throw ominous and cryptic claims at him. Haruno affirmed that this annoyed him, seeing how it reminded him of his late master. The hero affirmed that he would be the one in charge of his destiny and that he would do as he pleased. This made the one wearing glasses crack a smile, before showing our hero a picture, stating how it was a photo of his little sister. With that, the angered young man unleashed a powerful wave of energy. The other swordsman was shocked to see that this was fighting spirit, and that it was much fiercer than the average. This also left him amazed, as the protagonist had everything he needed to be considered a swordsman. The one in white then reassured the big brother by explaining how his sister was safe, and that he only photographed her for background checking, before putting it on the blade of his master. Yet as he closed the distance between the two of them in the blink of an eye, the one in the glasses affirmed that he would surely cross the line if this would allow him to duel our hero, leaving him annoyed and angered. Haruto explained that the young man had no right to regret what was about to happen to him. Yet as he took his stance, the one in white affirmed that he had come prepared. With that, both swordsmen were now ready to face each other off. The one in white activated the skill Killing Intent, leaving the hero utterly shocked, seeing how it had deleted the Chronos factor around him. Due to that, the protagonist would be unable to predict his opponent's movement using magic. With that, the one with glasses decided to make his move, and in the blink of an eye, closed the distance between him and his opponent. The young man then explained that his skill doesn't showcase his murderous intent as the name suggests, but quite the opposite, as it allowed him to suppress his own presence as he tried to slash our hero. Yet the space-time magic user managed to dodge it at the last moment. As he installed a distance between the two of them, the protagonist began to think of how this skill was deleting the Chronos factor from around his opponent. Haruno found it ridiculous that the one in white explained his skill to him like some comic book character. Yet the katana wielder affirmed that he only revealed the mechanism of his power, due to his absolute confidence regarding his own victory. And as he sneaked up past our hero, he explained how someone with no aura could easily have the first move on their opponents. The young man tried to move out of the way, but it was too late. With that, the one in white scored a successful hit, and finally managed to slash him. But as the image began to dissipate, the young man was left shocked. Our hero, who had used the skill Avatar Replay, managed to sneak himself behind his opponent. Haruto tried to slash his confused opponent, yet he escaped at the last second. Seeing how he had missed left the young man very annoyed, as his opponent decided to take a few steps back. As the buttons on his chest began to fall off, the young man began to think of how he should have had the first blood, and that what he had got wasn't an afterimage. The hero then used his skill, Quick Body, in order to speed himself up and immediately charge at his opponent. This left the man amazed by the strength of the unknown, before cracking a smile upon seeing how captivating it was. With that, both swordsmen clashed blades, as each of them was determined to be the victor over the other. The one with the glasses was eager to see what the protagonist, who was unable to see the Chronos factor, would do next. The clash of blades was suddenly interrupted by the skill Stop Chain cast upon the one with both swords. This maneuver caught him off guard, As to his shock, our hero charged up his fist before letting go of his blade in order to deploy the Chronos fist. Seeing how he was caught by surprise, the young man abandoned his katana in order to reinforce himself with the skill steel body. Just like that, the one with the glasses tanked a punch charge with space-time magic which knocked him a few feet back. Just like that, the young man had survived an imminent attack. The one in white was left confused as this punch was far more powerful than normal. With that, his suspicions have been confirmed as the protagonist who was determined to win was one of the Awakened ones. And just as our hero began to think that his last punch had no effect, his opponent asked to suspend the fight, leaving him utterly shocked. The one in white apologized for bringing the little Ria into this, and that it was an incident on his part that will never be repeated. Yet Haruto had a hard time following. With that being said, the katana wielder picked up his weapon and decided to make his leave. Our hero tries to stop them as their duel was still not finished. The one in white affirmed that they shall continue it, but it will be at his school, and how our hero possessed one-of-a-kind potential, and how he hadn't yet reached the power level that he aimed for. With that being said, the one with the glasses proposed to Haruto to learn the mysteries of his sword at his school in order to gain more power. This reminded our hero of the letter sent to him by his master, urging him to perfect his swordsmanship. Yet he affirmed to his opponent once again that he didn't trust him a bit. Yet the one with the glasses affirmed that the second year should put his faith in him, seeing how he was more powerful. With that being said, he affirmed that he would be awaiting him at his school before making his leave. Just then, our hero noticed a piece of paper in his pocket and quickly realized that the one with the glasses had secretly placed an exchange permit between his school and the Azabu school during the duel, and that the mentioned institution in the permit was the school attended by the one with the glasses. This sneaky little maneuver to assert dominance left our hero very much irritated. Shortly after, the man began to think about his recent opponent and how powerful he was during their face-off. He was determined to help expand his potential before he could be manipulated and sacrificed by the 7 sages. The one with the glasses planned to use our hero's power to orchestrate a coup against the 7 powerful mages, as he was determined to ruin Iron's plans. Meanwhile, our hero carefully read the paper regarding the student exchange program, which explained how it would last a month, where one needed to be from the agency schools to participate, and how student council members would receive elite treatment. But just then, rushing footsteps were heard. Sakurakuji Yuzuki, who had finally found our hero, was determined to make him join the council. The young man was pissed by her arrival and offer. The girl paused for a small moment in order to process what had just happened, before expressing how shocked she was. 7 days later, at the Azabu High School division of the Adventurers Cultivation Agency in the Minato district, the student council president expressed how pleasingly surprised she was by our hero, seeing how he had agreed to join her in Azabu after becoming a member of the student council. And while the young man claimed that he only did what was expected for his new position, he only joined seeing how it would give him elite treatment within this new establishment. The president then began to explain how many S-ranks had graduated from this school and how it was the best in Japan, and how it required a very high level of magic -70 in order to enroll in it. Sakurakuji Yuzuki then stated that they should work as hard as possible in order to catch up to the rest. With that, both student council members entered the exchange school. Inside, the building had a very futuristic appearance. The president suggested that they should salute the board chairman first thing first. Our protagonist began to observe his surroundings and quickly realized that all the students were gossiping about them, seeing how they were 2 total strangers inside their school. Yet he decided to pay it no mind and just do what he wanted to do. The president nervously claimed that the young man had nothing to fear, seeing how she was with him. And seeing how anxious she seemed, the young man grew worried about her. Shortly after, the exchange students arrived at the chairman's office, and so they knocked on the door before entering the office of the one who was expecting them. The one with the glasses presented himself as Kiryu Muramasa, the chairman of Azabu. Our hero was shocked to see that his previous opponent was the one running the place. The chairman then got up from his seat and welcomed the young ones to his establishment. Kiryu Muramasa explained how this school mostly focused on sword skills, and how these days mage and magic were at their prime, and that they were unique even inside the Adventurers Cultivation Agency, seeing how their duels were done by swords instead of magic. The chairman then affirmed that in the month they would be spending in Azabu, he would be making them into the strongest of the school by dueling. This brief explanation left Haruto quite shocked. Sakurakuji Yuzuki, who was caught off guard, explained how nothing like that was mentioned in the exchange student program and was quickly left confused as her junior asked if duels were the only way to fight the chairman once again. Kiryu Muramasa revealed that only the strongest among the students have the right to fight him, the most powerful swordsman, which left our hero pleased, as he affirmed that he will quickly climb through the ranks in order to achieve his victory. Our hero claims to his seniors that he'll do it as fast as possible in order to return home as early as possible. Haruto explained how unsatisfied he was that their duel was stopped midway, and that once their face-off is over, he will return to his school. Kiryu Muramasa affirmed that he had no opposition regarding this, seeing how arrogance and valor didn't matter. In this school, seeing how it only respected the power and strength of swordsmen who want to climb the ranks. The man then opened his status window, in order to supply the exchange students with great access and a permit to use the necessary materials and facilities along with their student ID and schedules. After taking a look at his new access grade and place and the ranking within the school, the young man, who wondered if the ranking system in this place was similar to his school, assumed that he should challenge the strongest students right away. With that, Kiryu Muramasa wished them both to successfully climb through the ranks. Shortly after, the student council president began to complain about the recent events, and she wouldn't be partaking in any duel in order to get herself a higher position. So Haruto pointed out that it would be useless, seeing how she was a new president. With that being said, the protagonist assumed that the best way to become number one would be to explore the places that the strongest students frequented, and after some searching, our hero managed to find the right place. The girl was shocked to see that they were now in the 2F cafeteria of the school, and assumed that her junior was hungry, which she claimed to confirm. Suddenly, a hologram appeared and welcomed the exchange students. The holographic maze explained how they recommend a balanced breakfast to the students, seeing how the school considers it as the base of a good day. As it invited them to eat their fill in the cafeteria amidst breakfast, the hero quickly realized that the hologram had scanned their IDs to give them custom advice. Sakurakuji Yuzuki was impressed by the grand present variety and had a hard time believing that they could eat without paying, making her think that rich schools were different from theirs. And so she decided to attack the buffet, claiming it to be a simple examination, while asking the uncomfortable junior to go on his way. Haruno watched her as she excitedly claimed how she needed to calculate the calories within her diet and how they needed to quickly enroll in the Abazu branch. Our hero couldn't help but find the new president to have an odd personality. With that being said, the young man decided to take care of the real goal for coming to the cafeteria, when suddenly a loud sound was heard. Our hero noticed that 3 students were ganging up on a single shorter boy. He asked them to leave him alone. Yet the head of the bullies ignored him, pointing out how such a great sword was wasted on someone like him. The boy demanded his weapon back, yet the bullies from the Redu faction affirmed that this was punishment for sitting in their places. Just as our hero expected it, such low individuals existed everywhere, even in such elite schools. Seeing how teachers couldn't cover the entire establishment, cafeterias were ideal for bullying, yet this pleased our hero as it spared him from the task of searching. The bully then pointed out to the boy that only those who are ranked 99 or above had the right to sit in his cafeteria. Yet the boy found this completely ridiculous, seeing how he should have a choice regarding where he sits to eat. Yet the bully affirmed that it does. Our hero was left shocked upon seeing that the young man had the same title that he once had in his school. The bully then pushed the bullied one to the ground, as all began to whisper in silence, unable to intervene. With that being said, the space-time winner decided to make his move. The bullies then decided to sell the sword for profit, claiming that it was wasted on someone as weak as the young man. Yet, as they ordered him to leave, he urged them to return his weapon at once, as it was a very precious gift from his father. This annoyed the bully, who affirmed that he couldn't care less about the student's personal affairs as he tried to punch him. But just as the little one prepared himself to get hit, he was left surprised, as the punch had been blocked by the protagonist. The bully, who was left stunned, demanded to know the identity of the one who easily stopped his strike. Haruto presented himself as the new exchange student and quickly asked about the whereabouts of the strongest students in the school. Yet upon seeing how the bully was refusing to answer him, he quickly reinforced his grip on his hand. The student was now in pain as the protagonist explained how someone as impulsive as him was the most likely to tell him what he wanted to know. The bully's friend watched in amazement. With that being said, Haruto asked the student once again about the whereabouts of the strongest in the school, leaving him quite terrified. But just then, the protagonist felt a blade close to his neck trying to stop him, and so fearing for his life, he decided to back away. The space-time user couldn't understand it, seeing how he felt a transparent sword that was about to slash him. The leader of the Redu faction, known as Redu Nobunaga, was here to defend his men. That's a good thing. This young man was a last-year student and the 3rd strongest swordsman in the Azabu school, as well as the head of the kitchen-style school and a faction leader. Despite the school despising his behavior, the young man was almost as strong as the #1 student and a solid candidate to be a future instructor. The bully boy couldn't believe it, as someone as grand as the swordsman was now in a tense situation with the new exchange student. The leader of the faction demanded an explanation regarding the situation, so Haruto explained how he was just saving the boy from the students that were bullying him. Hearing this, he turned to his men and asked them if he was lying. The bullies denied Haruto's story, claiming that they were just trying to get seats for the faction. With that being said, the leader smacked the boys, leaving the boy and the hero shocked. After knocking him out, Redu Nobunaga affirmed that their eyes betrayed them when lying, before picking up the blade and apologizing on behalf of them for the bad behavior that they had showcased. Our hero, who was caught off guard, affirmed that this apology wasn't necessary. The leader of the faction then immediately returned the stolen katana to its original owner. The amazed boy thanked him. The protagonist was shocked to see that someone as righteous as Redu Nobunaga was the one in charge of the 3 boys. The faction boss revealed that despite his desire to forget everything after apologizing, he affirmed that he was unable to, seeing how the honor of their faction was now at stake. And so he challenged the protagonist to a sword duel. The boy urged him to decline, seeing how Redu Nobunaga was one of the 3 strongest students in the school. Yet to his shock, our hero immediately accepted. This pleased the third-year student, who proclaimed that he would be awaiting in the arena at the end of classes. With that being said, the young man nervously asked our hero if he wouldn't be harmed, stating that it was foolishness to accept the challenge of one of the school's strongest. The hero decided to ask the boy a question of his own. Haruto asked him if he wasn't angry by the way he was being treated, before affirming that the low-like students would keep on harassing him until the end of his high school life. Yet the boy nervously explained that he just had to patiently endure it until it ends. Just then, blue magic came out of the boy's blade, which surprised our hero, and so he decided to read the flow of time and was left amazed by what he had found. With that being said, he decided to ask the young man a real question regarding his actions when his dear blade was taken away. Our hero explained how he acted recklessly after being the victim of injustice, driven by impulse. Haruto, who had a past similar to the boy's present, asked him if he was really going to not fight back. After thinking for a short time and gathering his courage, the boy affirmed that he couldn't take it anymore, that he wanted to get his revenge on the bullies and teach them what happens when they steal his sword. With that being said, our hero asked the young man for his name. Just like that, Kuju Haruto and Ibuki Mitsurugi introduced themselves to each other. The protagonist stated that Ibuki should also challenge a specific someone to a duel, and that this specific someone was the very guy that stole his blade, leaving him quite surprised. Haruto then reassured him by stating that he would do his best in order to guarantee them both victory. Ibuki Mitsurugi decided to place his faith in the student when suddenly our hero received a message. It was from the student council president, who wanted to know his location, seeing how she was still enjoying breakfast. This message that brought the mood greatly annoyed our hero, as the time for our hero's duel in the waiting room of the arena. The student council president began to scold him for picking a fight with one of the top-ranking students on his first day. Our hero struggled to explain, and claimed to have had a long day, yet the president affirmed that this explanation wasn't enough. So he recalled the words of the chairman urging them to get to the top rank, and that it was faster to just challenge the third strongest student. Haruto revealed that he plans to become the #1 student, defeating the chairman and finally returning home. Ibuki Mitsurugi was deathly shocked by our hero's ambition. It had a gut feeling that he could very well accomplish it. The boy explained that if he manages to win, he will be the first student ever at the Azabu school to defeat the chairman, which will probably allow him to acquire the legendary skilled Q, leaving our hero quite intrigued. According to Ibuki Mitsurugi, the chairman who had created this school had placed the mysteries of the sword that he learned inside one skilled cube. This left our hero shocked, as he remembered how he was invited to be taught the mysteries of the sword in Azabu by Kiryu Muramasa himself. The space-time mage asked about the nature of the cube, so the boy explained how it contained the skilled dimensional slash that only the chairman had mastered, leaving our hero quite shocked by the name of the set skill, stating how it implies the ability to slice through other planes. Ibuki Mitsurugi affirmed that this was what the rumor says, yet none had ever seen this skill in action. President Haruto assumed that this would be his key to saving the trapped future Haruto. With that being said, he was now more than ever determined to achieve victory. With that, a burning fighting desire sparked in our hero. Yet at the start, he wanted his new friend to be the first one to duel. Ibuki Mitsurugi decided to take the challenge head-on, unsure of it, seeing how his opponent had almost beaten him up for challenging him. And so he asked our hero about his great plot to guarantee him the win. Haruto affirmed to Ibuki that victory shall be his if he obeyed his words. And so he asked the boy to let him examine his sword. Shortly after, numerous students had gathered in the arena in order to cheer for the upcoming fights. The first one opposed the bully and the bullied in a sword fight. The bully then called out his victim for daring to challenge him, before affirming that he would make him suffer for his actions, leaving him quite alarmed. Meanwhile, from the audience, the student council president expressed how doubtful she was about Ibuki's victory. Yet our hero reassured her by stating that the win was guaranteed, and that their new friend was totally capable of achieving victory. Back in the waiting room, our hero advised the boy to quickly draw out his sword at the start of the fight in order to perform a drawing slash without thinking. Ibuki was confused seeing how short the plan was. The protagonist confirmed, stating that there was a high chance of the bully charging at the beginning of the duel, seeing how he perceives Ibuki as a weak, small person. According to our hero, the bully must think that he will achieve victory by scaring off his opponent, which is why they will use his way of thinking as an advantage to gain the edge, which shocked the young man. Our hero then urged him to keep his eyes open, seeing how hitting the target was a must, before stating that this should guarantee the young one victory. Haruto asked his new friend to have faith in him. With that, Ibuki agreed to leave his faith in the hands of the exchange student. The protagonist was certain that his new friend could win against his bully. Meanwhile, in a room above the stadium, the chairman watched from afar. With that being said, the duel between the bully and the bully had begun. The duel was about to start. Ibuki Mitsurugi, the second year, who was ranked in the top 3,500, faces his bully, Kinju Kentaro, a second-year student who was ranked number 153 within the school. The bully then affirmed that after his victory, they will continue their relationship as it is. The young man gathered his courage, clenched his fist in frustration, and affirms the body that he just insulted to be the victor, and that he won't have the right to harass him ever again. This quite angered number 153. While the exchange students watched closely, despite his doubts and fear, the young man prepared himself and took the drawing sword stance at the start of the duel rank. Why his opponent reached into a pocket dimension in order to pull out another blade. Seeing how his main purpose was to dual wield, the hero, who realized that, assumed that number 153 must be someone of great skill. Yet in reality, he was a complete amateur as he charged at his opponent. Ibuki realized that the duel was going just as his new friend had predicted it. He then focused his gaze on his enemy just as Haruto advised him, before performing the drawing slash. The attack was so quick that the bully couldn't believe it, and despite his best efforts to block it, he was left shocked upon seeing his own weapons getting sliced. Just like that, number 153 had been blasted into the wall. As he began to cough blood, his two friends were left baffled, while his leader was unimpressed. Just like that, the boy had achieved victory. The student council president was happy to see him win, while our hero, on the other hand, wasn't surprised, seeing how it was enchanted. This left Sakurakuji Yuzuki quite intrigued. The hero, who used his power to read the flow of time, quickly realized that his new friend's weapon was imbued with a very rare, powerful effect, and that he and Ibuki shared the same magic restraint, but instead the boy's power had been constantly absorbed by the sword. The enchanted weapon also possessed the ability to release the stored power in a single strike, and since its wielder hadn't defeated a monster for the 3 years he had carried it, it had accumulated a grand amount of mana. If for a mysterious reason, Ibuki wasn't informed that his weapon was a magic sword. But regardless of everything, our hero was still pleased to see his friend win. Later on, the boy expressed his gratitude towards his new friend for guaranteeing him the victory. Ibuki Mitsurugi revealed that he had been feeling amazed ever since the protagonist had set foot in Abazu. Yet our hero affirmed that the boy only achieved victory by his own power and decided to inform him of the true nature of his force later on. With that being said, the time for our hero's duel had come. Just like that, he and Reiju Nobunaga were now face to face. As the head chairman watched with great interest, the leader of the faction declared that he wouldn't be holding anything back, seeing how the honor of him and his men was at stake. Haruto affirmed that he didn't expect anything less. With that, the both of them drew out their swords, and were now fully prepared as their duel was about to begin. With that, the confrontation commenced. To our hero's shock, his opponent wasn't making a single move, seeing how relaxed the third strongest seemed. Haruto's friends watched in intrigue, while the members of the faction were left smiling. The chairman seemed to have a certain idea about the situation, yet our hero was left clueless, seeing how his opponent had left himself wide open with a rather poor stance. Yet despite that, he decided to give it his all against him, and just as he charged ahead, he suddenly felt alerted as the young man gazed into him. Just like that, the same murderous intent that he felt in the cafeteria had returned. Our hero then stopped himself and used Eye of Time. Yeah, just as he expected, there was no chrono factor around his opponent. This made him realize that the elite of Abazu could use the killing intent of their master, which makes his prediction based on the flow of time pointless, leaving him in a tough spot. After judging that the distance was well enough, the leader of the faction took a deep breath. Before unleashing the secret technique of the Kishin, a powerful slash named Aesthetics of Nature was unleashed, an attack so powerful that it easily cut through the ground. This left our hero shocked as he was now surrounded by invisible slashes, yet he managed to dodge at the last second by jumping into the air. But just then, he appeared in front of him. His opponent then pointed out how the air was the only way to avoid his slashes, before launching another attack with his katana, that the young man immediately blocked using his Chaos Sword. Reiju Nobunaga was then left quite intrigued as he noticed the protagonist imbuing his fists with mana. The young man then quickly used the defensive steel body in response to the offensive skill Chrono Fist. With that, number 3 tanked the powerful space-time punch and cracked a smile. Our hero was left baffled upon seeing that his opponent was rendered unharmed by his attack. With that being said, each of them took a few steps back. Reiju Nobunaga expressed how amazing it was that the young man could take on his secret technique. As the faction leader began to praise him for his skills, the protagonist was left amazed to see him come out unharmed from his space-time punch. The third-year student affirmed that his fighting style also relied on a well-trained body as well as short swordsmanship, and that his effortful flesh is then turned into a sharp plate. The hero took a moment to retake his breath and decided to rely on his instincts, the flow of time. Reiju Nobunaga was shocked to see that his opponent was now only thinking higher thoughts, and so he decided to imitate him. With that being said, each of them used speed-enhancing skills. Just before that, Haruto charged at his opponent, yet the third year evaded his slash by a hair, before deciding to launch a counterattack that the space-time user managed to parry. Our hero then jumped back, before trying to slash his opponent, who successfully managed to evade his attack by a hair once again. Reiju Nobunaga then switched his katana to reverse grip, before planting it on the ground in order to gain some momentum, for the sole purpose of kicking our hero away. Haruto managed to stop himself mid-course. With that being said, the both of them stood face to face once again, and despite acknowledging his opponent's power, the protagonist was more determined than ever to achieve the win. Out here, he gathered all of his strength in order to clash blades with his opponent once again. Raido Nobunaga then swung back his blade, before delivering a powerful slash that our hero escaped at the last moment. Haruto then decided to go for a vertical attack that the third year blocked with ease, left impressed by the scale demonstrated in this duel, which wasn't surprising from the faction leader, but utterly amazing from the exchange student. And while the student council president began to panic due to the recent events, our hero's new friend grew worried about him. The bullies of the raided faction began to cheer for their leader. The protagonist was determined to win by all means. All of this in order to save his lost master in the space-time hall. Seeing how determined his opponent was, the young man was left intrigued and assumed that he must be fighting for what seems to be a losing cause. Despite having admiration for such devotion, Raido Nobunaga affirmed that victory shall be his as he deployed emerging aura that left our hero alerted. With that being said, the third strongest of Azabu charged at the exchange student, thinking of how he was in a similar situation, fighting a tough fight. One day, the 8-year-old Raido Nobunaga informed his mother that he would be going out. She merely asked him to enjoy his time and be careful. After that, he had arrived at school. The boy noticed something odd, as insulting messages demanding his return home were written all over his desk. The culprits mockingly began to wonder about the one who had done such a thing. All began to mock him, stating that what was done to him wasn't an injustice, and that he was a miserable and poor thug. The young Raido Nobunaga had no choice but to live his school life alone. Later, when he returned home, the man demanded from the lady the debt that she owed him. Upon seeing that the lady in question was his mother, the little one was left utterly shocked. Despite knowing that the lady wasn't at fault, the man pointed out how she was fated to become the one that would repay her dead husband's debt. The young boy's mother asked him to have a little more patience and give her more time so she could find a solution in order to get the necessary funds. Upon hearing this, frustration began to fill little Raido Nobunaga's heart. Later that night, the same boy began to train on a punching bag, as he was determined to gain more and more power in order to get out of this miserable life. A few years later, Raido Nobunaga delivered a powerful punch to his opponent. Just like that, he had easily won the boxing match. Shortly after, the boxer thanked his manager for giving him his share of the rewards. Despite now having a job, the young man was still obsessed and in pursuit of power, seeing how to him it was the only way to shield his dear ill mother. And as he began to think that he would do anything in order to gain more power, he suddenly stumbled upon a mysterious someone that recognized him as the junior high school student and the champion of the underground illegal boxing arena, Raido Nobunaga, leaving him intrigued. The one in white explained how, upon witnessing the young man fight, he judged that he was wasting his physical prowess in such a place, leaving him angered. But just then, attention was captivated by the chairman who put his all for money for the sake of his mother. This filled the young man with a rage like none before. Yet the man cracked a soft smile and invited the young man to learn swordsmanship at his school. The boxing champion was intrigued upon learning of the Kishin style. According to the one in white, the techniques of the Kishin style were perfect for martial artists, and that he should come and find him after getting a grasp of them. With that being said, the chairman reached out his hand and invited him into the Azabu school, which specializes in sword wielding, before offering a scholarship. Yet the young talented one quickly flung his hand away, stating that it all seemed like a scam to him. So you're just making up excuses now. Yet now more determined than ever, as thirsty for power as he is, Raido Nobunaga began to bleed from his fists upon clutching them so much, as he was determined to get stronger by any means. 2 years had passed since he encountered the chairman, and the one who always wanted power since childhood had quickly mastered the Kishin style. He also had his own theory about the reason behind the chairman inviting him to this establishment. Seeing how many delinquents and impolite persons attended the school, seeing how only the strongest sword was allowed to speak, and so he assumed that the one in white wanted him to lead the delinquents. Just like that, the raided faction, which was entirely composed of thugs, came to light under his command. Yet the powerful swordsman couldn't help but find the chairman suspicious, and yet he taught him a way to earn a living. Just like that, he and his mother were debt-free, which left the young man very thankful to the chairman. Raido Nobunaga was also aware that those outside their minds perceived his men as some sort of low lives. Yet to him, they were just delinquent who lived like a thug that he could have become. For this whole reason, the third-year student was more determined than ever to achieve the win. This display of determination surprised our hero. His opponent then used Scenic Beauty, a secret technique from the Kishin. This allowed him to turn the tides of the battle. The protagonist found himself in a difficult situation as he was about to lose his duel in a contest of strength on seeing how much power Raido gained so suddenly. Haruto had to admit that the faction leader was like none he ever fought before, and that their clash of blades revealed that Raido Nobunaga was an honest person. The space-time user, who couldn't use his Eye of Time, had no choice but to rely on other means, and so he decided to have faith in his own power, as well as his blade Chaos Sword, which had been with him all along. Just like that, an aura equal to the katana wielders appeared in the arena. As he placed all of his strength in this strike, he couldn't help but remember the words of the letter affirming that the sword was the key to their strength. The faction leader was shocked to see his opponent cracking a smile. With that, the swords stopped pressing against each other. Raido Nobunaga couldn't bring himself to judge the young man, seeing how he was also enjoying their confrontation, and so the both of them charged at each other once again. causing an explosion due to the clash. And while all were left shocked and fearing for the one they were rooting for, the chairman watched closely, waiting for the results to be unveiled. At first, both were standing, but just then, it turned out that the third-year student had been slashed and his weapon had been broken. This left the faction leader utterly shocked, seeing how his katana as well as his steel body had been slashed, leaving him no choice but to acknowledge the power that our hero was wielding, and that it could be far stronger than the one in white as he fell to the ground. Just like that, and to the student council president's shock, the protagonist had won the duel. The tired hero then looked at his opponent, as his thugs rushed to heal him. Meanwhile, the board chairman admired the young man who had defeated the third strongest in his school by resorting to techniques and skills. This made him certain that our hero was an awakened one and was perfect for taking down the evildoers who had been dwelling in Azabu for so long. Meanwhile, the young man began to tremble due to his recent sword duel, as there was a joy like none he had experienced before. Then our hero was left surprised, as Raid of Nobunaga and all of his factions stood in front of him. All then apologized to him at once. Yet he turned to Ibuki, who also agreed that this was too much, and that an apology wasn't needed. Raid of Nobunaga thanked them for their comprehension, before surely affirming to our hero that being defeated sometimes filled him with joy. Our hero was left baffled upon seeing how fast his last opponent changed from apologetic to energetic. Just then he noticed that the gazes of all the students were upon them, and so he quickly searched down the faction leader in order to not attract much attention. The third-year student affirmed that he didn't need to do him like that, revealing that if our hero ever found himself in a problematic situation, he was free to ask his faction for help, seeing how they will surely come to his aid. The shocked young man accepted the kind offer. Haruno decided to call the Raid of faction if he ever found himself in trouble. The next day it was revealed that while human crime was decreasing, monster destruction was increasing, forcing the authorities in Japan to work with the Adventurers Guild. And that, to the Adventurers Guild's statistics, the Japanese economy had seen a steady growth rate since the appearance of the dungeons 3 decades ago. Our hero decided to go on his way. The newsman revealed that their country had resorted to numerous facilities to make hunting equipment, as all who sought to roam dungeons were Japanese. With that being said, the little sister handed her big brother his lunch, leaving him thankful, as the news explained how this was the third economic rise in their country after a big disaster. Ria asked her brother if he would be attending the other school today, first stating that he was part of an exchange program. His little sister wished to visit the elite school, assuming that it must be very fancy. Yet to her shock, her brother revealed that despite looking new, its inside leaned more towards tradition. Raya then pointed out how enjoyable a normal school life must be. This shocked the protagonist, as it made him remember that today is his little sister's first day at middle school, which Ria confirmed she needed to make up for the lost time at her elementary school level. With that, the boy, who was determined to make his little sister happy, stated that he would support her, stating that they both should work as hard as they can. Later that same day, while walking to school, Haruno noticed a conflict between a boy and a girl who urged him to release her. The young man was having none of it, seeing how he had spent too much on her. Just then, the crowd recognized the girl as the successful influencer Milulu, who was a soon-to-be singer with countless followers, who seemed to be in a conflict of some kind with the boy. Haruno chose to stay out of it. The boy then tried to stop the girl, who began to run away, stating that she never wanted to see him ever again. Yet as the influencer mocked him, he tried to warn her that she was standing right next to a hazardous and newly uncovered dungeon. As Milulu realized the danger she was in, a monster began to make its way into the real world. A giant monster appeared out of the portal, leaving the girl utterly shocked. Milulu was now in front of the subjugation rank Imperial, a beta-class monster designed for destruction that requires a raid level of 1200 to fight. The monster then gazed at the girl, who was terrified by his presence. While some were confused by the presence of a monster outside of the dungeon, others realized that it was a migrating species. But in the end, all decided to run as fast as they could. Milulu, who was the closest to the monster, was left petrified. That slowly began to approach her, and while everyone assumed that this was the end for her, a quick, swift movement then occurred. And just as the Imperial Centipede launched its attack, it was suddenly sliced. The monster was now decapitated. All were left confused. Our hero managed to rescue the girl at the last minute. As she opened her eyes, Milulu was left shocked. The boy then placed her back on the ground and urged her to escape immediately. Milulu was still amazed. Despite wanting to live a normal life, the hero's consciousness wouldn't allow him to let the people be carnaged by the monster, when suddenly he was left stunned upon seeing the head that he had just cut down regrow itself, making him realize that his opponent had the ability to regenerate. Just then, men in red arrived at the scene and introduced themselves as members of the Adventurers Guild from Minato. All urged the young Haruto to flee while he could in order to spare himself a cruel fate. Upon realizing that they are up against a beta-class monster who is a subjugation rank, and that they were under-leveled, they realized they were no match. One of the men stated that they should request backup from the 7 sages, yet the other affirmed that it would be pointless, seeing how they would arrive too late. Our hero was then left stunned upon learning that despite being outmatched, the adventurers would take on the monster for the sake of the citizens. Just then, the Imperial Centipede charged at the humans. Yet just as they began to fear the worst, it was suddenly immobilized by none other than Haruto, who used Stop Chain Level 2. All were left amazed by this grand feat. The protagonist was well aware that keeping a low profile was now the least of his worries, and so he decides to use the full extent of his power. He'll level Malcolm as well as level 3 of Quick Body in order to charge up the monster. But just then, the Imperial Centipede launched a powerful liquid at our hero, only for him to quickly escape, bending over it. The young man decided to limit the destruction as much as possible, seeing how the last attack was poison and acid at the same time. But just then, he noticed that the S-rank monster was about to bite him. Just like that, the protagonist found himself in the jaws of the giant monster. Yet the beta class was left surprised upon seeing that his latest victim was suddenly vanishing. The hero had used Avatar Replay in order to save himself, explaining how this was a copy of the recent past him. With that being said, he decapitated the monster once again. All were left amazed as the S-rank monster fell on the ground. Milulu was particularly baffled. That being said, the young man landed next to the corpse and resorted to his space-time magic in order to cast Material Rewind upon it in order to forbid it from regrowing its head. Just like that, the monster was finally defeated. With that being said, the protagonist had taken down the first centipede head out of the starting 8. The hero firmly grasped the scale sword and stood ready. An Imperial Centipede then charged at him, only for him to dodge it at the last second, before jumping above it, high into the air while charging a powerful attack and unleashing his strength all at once, in order to deliver a powerful slash that resulted in quite the damage. The young man kept on rushing through the battlefield. He had already destroyed 5 of them. Meanwhile, the adventurers were left baffled by this power, seeing how he seemed like a mere student from high school. But just then, our hero was left alerted, upon seeing a bright light forming right in front of him. The 3 remaining monsters were each preparing a powerful beam, and the attack was quick and the target was one. Yet it wasn't enough to impress the protagonist, who swiftly dodged the attacks. His eye of time allowed him to easily predict the movement patterns of the attacks in front of the monsters and didn't go unnoticed. Just then, something came out of the ground. Haruto was being the target of a sneak attack from underneath. Just then, our hero recalled his last duel, and how his opponent activated Sealed Body that allows him to enhance the durability of his physique, and that the one in white also resorted to this technique while thinking that his own lacking points were endurance and durability. Haruto decided to take a different approach, seeing how he usually evades every attack, causing him to burn too much stamina. And so he decides to apply the principle of Chrono Fist in a different way by channeling his Chrono Factor within. Only this time he wouldn't be using it as an offensive skill. Upon seeing the result forming, the hero was left pleased as his plan was going smoothly. Just like that, the skilled Chrono Guard was created. Upon seeing how his attack was blocked, the S-rank monster was left shocked. With that being said, our hero decided to counterattack, as he switched his shield for his Chaos Sword and charged at the beasts. The 3 monsters were then left confused as the attacking enemy managed to mysteriously make a copy of himself that kept on charging at them. With that being said, Chaos Meteor had been unleashed. The citizens watched as a great explosion occurred. In the end, only Haruto was left standing. Just like that, the monsters had been slain. This feat allowed our hero to increase his level as well as his swordsmanship, on top of allowing him to get more than 5 million credits as well as a new skill cube. And while the one from the Adventurers Guild was left speechless, Milulu couldn't help but admire our hero's prowess. With the panic coming to an end, our hero could finally catch his breath, and the adventurers immediately expressed their gratitude towards him for saving them. With that, he was invited into the Adventurers Guild Minato. One of them even stated that he should be the one in charge, leaving the leader a little shocked. Yet upon seeing him decline, the adventurers insisted on their offer even more. Seeing how what he feared had become true, the protagonist decided to resort to a trick up his sleeve, and so he began to pretend to consider the offer, leaving the adventurers excited, only for him to quickly escape using Quick Body and leaving a copy of himself behind. Just like that, the adventurers found themselves talking to a fake, while the real one watched from afar. The hero had used Material Rewind in order to create a fake image of himself by freezing the light reflecting him. Despite not being proud of how unethical this was, the hero had no choice, seeing how he was in a rush. Shortly after, our hero regained footing on the ground and immediately began to run, hoping to arrive in time, when suddenly someone parried his way. Milulu found our hero. This left the protagonist shocked as his mirage didn't seem to have tricked the one he had just rescued. The influencer then pointed out how this kid, challenging his space-time magic, had run off and left without saying a word after saving her, and so she demanded an explanation. Upon hearing this, our hero was left baffled and intrigued, seeing how he should be the one being thanked. With that being said, the girl asked the boy if there was anything he would like to hear from her. Haruto explained that there was something. To the influencer's shock, the hero began to scold her about running off from someone clingy into a dangerous dungeon area, which she couldn't help but find weird and frustrating. And so she demanded to know what game he was trying to play, but he couldn't quite understand what she meant. The lady explained that our hero must know of her, that's why he was near, as she was certain that she was his secret crush. The influencer began to babble about having 5 million followers on the internet and being, if she told the truth, one of the most famous, and that her popularity led her to soon be a singer. as well as most likely having gotten a primary role in a new major drama as the last phase of casting played in her favor. Milulu affirmed that her popularity was now at its zenith, yet our hero found it odd that she was revealing so much to him. That being said, the girl proposed to the protagonist to appear in a video of hers. She didn't even finish talking as he ditched her, stating that he didn't have time for this. The girl urged him to stop, and so she began to chase him, only to be left shocked upon seeing that he had mysteriously disappeared. She tried to look for him, yet Haruto managed to escape through the air. The popular influencer was left greatly irritated, seeing how the protagonist didn't seem to show any interest in her. The girl couldn't be more annoyed. Just then, she began to have red cheeks as she looked at the picture of our hero, before realizing that she was in love with the boy that saved her. Milulu was certain that Haruto was an amazing person fated to save the Earth, seeing how this was something that her perfectly accurate Akashic vision had revealed. Shortly after, the chief of the Minato branch arrived at the scene. The man then explained to the citizens that the dungeon had been closed by magic and that they were all now safe, before thanking them for not getting in their way while dealing with the monsters. One of the soldiers then informed the man that too many bizarre events like the recent incident as well as the dungeon of Tokyo Tower had been happening. Suddenly, the man was approached by someone. He asked if he had approached the Anon, leaving the soldier confused. The girl decided to first shed her final thoughts about him, revealing that she took a liking to him to the point where she can't keep his secret. This made Kurogen realize why the board chairman of the Azabu school was so fixated on him. The girl then revealed in a cheerful tone that he made the right call by using a womanizer as well in order to engage the target. Kurogen stated that it must be the truth if the girl's eyes revealed it to her, as she was the last of the sages, Tellurium. The girl then revealed that her main job was influencer and that her spot among the 7 sages was just a part-time. Milulu was certain that she was sure to capture the young man, seeing how she had personally gone after him. Meanwhile, our hero, who arrived at school at the last second, felt a shiver running down his spine. Shortly after class had ended, Ibuki arrived searching for our hero, who quickly waved back. Haruto thanked his friend for giving him a tour of the school, so the boy explained how his family urged him to quickly repay his debts. But just then, someone approached the protagonist. The blushing girl shyly handed him a letter. The hero was intrigued, yet decided to express his gratitude. His friend explained how, due to the school's preservation of tradition, despite using the latest education program, love letters were still popular, and how, due to his victory over the third strongest, all including him were left amazed by him. Ibuki then explained how this girl had won the school's last year beauty contest, before asking about whether or not he would accept her feelings. Haruto decided to reject them, seeing how he had more trivial matters to attend to. This shocked the young man, seeing how he rejected someone of her position. With that being said, the both of them went to the last destination of the school tour. The protagonist had arrived at the Modern Dungeon Research Society, which was his new friend's club. The hero looked in intrigue, and the only member of the club was happy to announce that he was the president. Haruto asked Ibuki if he actually enjoys the club, which he excitedly affirmed, explaining how there was always something new to discover, like the hidden room inside an old F-rank dungeon that is now being investigated. Yet this information didn't surprise our hero, seeing how he had received his power inside the said room. That being said, Haruto asked about the location of the strongest in the school. Ibuki revealed that according to the nowadays group, the strongest and the second strongest were exploring an S-rank dungeon in Shiro Kanadai. Upon hearing this, the protagonist immediately got up from his seat in order to join them and defeat them inside the dungeon, yet his friend quickly stopped him, stating that only special adventurers had the right to enter the said dungeon, so the young man demanded an explanation. According to Ibuki, there was a high entrance fee to enter the dungeon, seeing how it appeared on the land of a rich man. This intrigued our hero, who was curious about the price. To his utter shock, the entrance fee was 50 million yen. Our hero couldn't believe it as his friend confirmed the required sum. But it was also stated that many valuable resources dwelled inside the dungeon, so one could easily get back what he paid in one trip. This made our hero think of how he wanted to become first place, in order to reach the powerful swordsman for the sole reason of obtaining the dimension slash that would allow him to free his master from the hole. The boy then explained how one must have a partner to enter, which doubled the required entrance fee, and suggested they set this matter aside. This made Haruto intrigued, as well as wondering if his 2 targets really paid the fee. But the boy explained that they didn't, seeing how they had contacts in common with the landowner. With that being said, the protagonist began to check his status window, leaving his friend intrigued. Our hero was almost 1,200,000 short to pay the entrance fee for a single person. So that being said, Ibuki proposed to wait for number 1 and number 2 outside of the dungeon. But the hero affirmed that they should head for the dungeon immediately, and that he will surely secure the required sum. This left his friend baffled, seeing how they needed 100 million yen. To his intrigue, the protagonist stated that he would now use something up his sleeve, and so Haruto asked Ibuki to follow him, as it wouldn't take much time. Later on, our hero was in front of Mikado Technologies, and while the boy was left intrigued, his friend asked him to just tag along. To the swordsman's shock, the protagonist revealed that they are now going to the company president's office. 14 days before this incident, as our hero unpacked his lunch, He and the plushie watched the news stating that Milulu had started her singing career and the release of Come Adventuring with Miru was now close. Upon seeing the reaction of his future self present, Haruto assumed that they must be acquainted. So the stuffed animal revealed how he shared an unhealthy relationship with her. This left our hero intrigued as he had some kind of connection with an influencer. With that being said, he asked about the current situation of the stuffed animal's timeline. Future Haruto asked his past self if he really wanted to know all the future. The boy affirmed that he was curious about it. With that, the stuffed animal asked the hero what would happen to his life if the future was unveiled to him, as well as its impact on his progress in space-time magic. It will also affect whether he will one day travel to the past in order to meet his younger self. According to the stuffed animal, revealing the future could potentially make him an entity as omnipotent as the Akashic Records and Flid's Jaf. With that being said, he once again asked his younger self if he truly wanted the future to be unveiled. After thinking for a small while, our hero affirmed that knowing what will happen in the future will make his life boring, which is why he declines, as he was determined to live as he pleases. Yet he then reached the plushie and decided to talk about trivial matters like the supposed death of his childhood friends, before torturing him and urging him to let him know in advance. The powerful wizard had no choice but to accept, when suddenly they were interrupted by a newsflash regarding Mikado Technologies having financial issues due to its failing recovery elixir Omega Potion, seeing how it needed an element that wasn't found yet. President Haruto was intrigued as his future self pointed out how Mikado was currently at this particular stage. With that being said, he decided to unveil a trivial matter to our hero, just like he asked. The young man was intrigued to see the plushie playing with his window panel, so the toy revealed how the said missing particle on the news was in fact the Chronos Factor, to his utter bafflement. According to the stuffed animal, the potion that can cure one of any harm needed the Chronos Factor, seeing how it rewinds the patient to his healthy state, and that Mikado was an honest company that he will supply with the necessary data in order to make it a future powerful support for our hero, seeing how they will do anything to repay the favor they had granted them. This left the toy wondering about the kind of payback that they will receive from Mikado. Back to the present day at Mikado Technologies. In the office of the company president, the man was glad to see our hero arriving, as he was none other than Mikado Kasuke, the CEO of the company. The man quickly assumed that our hero was here to get his reward, which was his part of the profits regarding the crafting of the Omega Potion, which is 500 million yen. Ibuki was left utterly shocked by this immense sum. The protagonist affirmed that he will repay the president, but the president of the company stated that he will offer him as much funds as he desires, seeing how the data he had sent them regarding the Chronos Factor were the main reason behind the successful creation of the Omega Potion. This allowed his organization to rise once again after being grateful. With that being said, he presented the first model of the Omega Potion to the two students, stating that they had avoided several rehabilitation laws at the last moment and that they had a heavy demand on this product. With that being said, the CEO transferred our hero the money and urged him to pass by once again, seeing how much Mikado Technologies was indebted to him. The boy couldn't help but express how amazed and impressed he was by the exchange student, leaving him very amused. With that, the protagonist stated that they should join the first and second strongest in the S-rank dungeon. Shortly after the entrance of Shira Kanadai S-rank dungeon, our heroes stood in front of the gate. Haruto had successfully paid 150 million yen at the entrance. The young man had his doubts, seeing how he wouldn't be able to repay our hero, yet the protagonist didn't care, stating that his friend's presence was enough as payback, and that this also goes for the confused student council president, who was brought as a healer. Haruto urged Ibuki to not talk about the entrance fee in front of the president, seeing how upset she would be. Yet just as they were about to enter, Milulu suddenly appeared and clung to our hero, leaving both of his allies utterly shocked. The girl tightly held our hero's arm. She then affirmed to the annoyed protagonist that she wouldn't be leaving him. Seeing this made Sakura Koji assume that our hero was using the student exchange program in order to have some wild relationships. But just then, Ibuki realized that this girl was the famous influencer. Haruto then quickly freed himself from her grasp and demanded to know the reason behind her presence. So Milulu began to brag about being an excellent detective, and that she started her career as an influencer who roams the dungeon as well as an idol, which our hero was unaware of. This pissed off the girl, seeing how he was unaware of this detail before stating that it was her followers who alerted her of his presence in Shira Kanadai, and so she demanded to be part of the exploration team, threatening to badmouth and live as a harasser if he dared to refuse, leaving the space-time mage greatly irritated. And when questioned about the entrance fee, the influencer revealed that her contacts allowed her to enter with ease. This left our hero concerned, as it seemed like the influencer would be joining whether he liked it or not. Milulu was then quickly pissed off as Haruto assumed that she was a healer, so she corrected him by stating that she is a cleric-type mage. With that being said, our hero had no other choice but to let the free spirit join his team. Yet the influencer was left intrigued as the hero decided to force her into a promise. Maru had a promise to quickly retreat in case of danger, while he assured her a safe escape, with her being concerned for his safety. Milulu quickly agreed to these terms. He then turned to the other two members of the party, stating that these terms also apply to them. Haruno was determined to never feel the pain of loss ever again. This quickly made him appear as a true leader in the eyes of Ibuki. With that being said, the party of four decided to enter the dungeon. Just like that, the protagonist was now inside. The hero suddenly felt a mysterious creature heading their way, and so he asked Ibuki about the nature of the monsters. There was an angry flying sea serpent who had the ability to kill a man with just one venomous bite. The other one was the A-rank Giga Giant, one of the strongest types of Cyclops, who would continue spreading destruction until nothing remained in his path. The third was the A-rank Evil Mantis that releases vacuum waves using its powerful legs in order to create slashes. Upon hearing how each of their opponents was powerful, the student council president was left worried. And while the hero understood it all, his friend proposed to retreat, seeing how facing such powerful enemies in an S-ranked dungeon is a bad idea. And so Haruno asked his party to be wary as he takes care of the monsters. All were left shocked as the young man charged right in. He then apologized to something for keeping it chained for so long, and that it now had permission to roam free. This was none other than his summon, the sacred beast. All were left impressed by the appearance of Cerberus, and so the beast of light and the horde of flying sea serpents charged right at each other. The three-headed hound then prepared his breath attack. He quickly launched it at the attacking horde, and binding the power of the mighty beast with his sword, our hero successfully managed to slay the numerous monsters, when suddenly he noticed the one-eyed giant charging at them. The monster quickly resorted to his giant weapon in order to smash them, only for this to be a clone made by Avatar Replay. Suddenly, our hero's summon, who snuck up behind the monster, bit him in the shoulder. With that, the giant Cyclops was defeated. But just then, the evil mantis horde began to surround the mighty hound. When suddenly the giant bugs noticed that our hero had jumped into the air, all launched their vacuum slashes at him, only for him to escape each and every one of them without any problem. He then changed the grip on his blade. Before stabbing the giant bug in the head, Haruto then turned to the others, and resorted to his chrono ray in order to kill them all at once. With that, all evil mantises had fallen except one. Suddenly, the monster turned his gaze to the student council president, leaving her intrigued. Just then, the monster tried to get rid of the healer, only to be left amazed and stunned upon being slashed in an instant. Like that, the last of the insects had been split in two by our hero. With that, the young man called off his blade and praised his three-headed hound for being such a helpful summon. Upon seeing how friendly the three-headed dog was with his master, the two students were left intrigued, while the influencer couldn't help but find it adorable. With that, the protagonist stated that they should go further into the dungeon. Shortly after, our heroes found themselves in front of two paths, unable to exactly tell what path the strongest and second strongest of Azabu had taken. Yet the protagonist affirmed that there was a way, and so he decided to use his newest space-time skill, called Retrovision. After fighting the Imperial Centipede on the street, the hero managed to put his hand on a new skill cube. This allowed him to give a new shape to his space-time magic. With the skill Retrovision, just like that, the room began to change as a counter appeared. All looked amazed as the counter began to count backward as the recent scenes began to replay and reverse. The president and the second-year student were intrigued by these reverse scenes. Our protagonist was well aware that using the chrono factor could allow him to replay scenes that had already occurred, which was the purpose of his newest skill. The seventh sage stated that this was only natural for someone that she observes. Our hero was searching for the rank 1 and the rank 2, and after rewinding 8 hours and 20 minutes, he finally noticed some students wearing the Azabu uniform. The space-time mage had finally found his desired opponents, and seeing how it was now 8 o'clock at night and 12 hours had passed since then, the two students must have passed by here at 8 in the morning. Yet this reasoning left him concerned as they should have exited the dungeon a long time ago, as well as the staff who didn't seem to really care about them. The hero then assumed that he might be jumping to hasty conclusions. With that, Retrovision was turned off. He declared to his party that they should go left, seeing how his future opponents went there. Ibuki couldn't help but be amazed by our hero's fantastic magic. This feeling was also shared by the student council president, who thought that they should both do their best in order to honor their school. Yet Midalulu seemed to have something else in mind. She then revealed that the right path had more treasures than the left one, and that they should go this way, seeing how the whole purpose of dungeon raiding was for one to quickly form himself a wealth. Yet our hero declined, stating that she was free to go right alone. He then explained to the shocked girl how she could come back to him immediately or flee if she sensed any danger, making her claim that she was joking. The girl then cracked a soft smile, as she couldn't help but acknowledge how kind the Haru-kun was. This new nickname shocked and intrigued our hero as his party went to the left corridor. Shortly after, the space-time mage found himself killing a giant wolf, while his friend was going up against moving skeletons. The president was casting powerful spells in order to strike flying enemies. To our hero's bafflement, the influencer stood by and began to encourage the other two members. Shortly after, the party found itself being attacked by goblins. The hero quickly drew out his chaos sword and killed one of them, when suddenly he noticed that the one he had missed was charging at his friend, and so he urged him to have faith in himself as he was totally able to win by using his technique. The alerted young man quickly realized what the exchange student was talking about, and so he took the stance of the drawing slash. waited for the right moment as the goblin attacked him, before unleashing his strength all at once. In order to slice the monster in half, Ibuki was particularly proud of himself for having slain a monster alone. Our hero affirmed to the young man that this was his true strength, leaving him very touched and thankful for everything that he did for him. The space-time mage was well aware of the magic blade constantly absorbing magic from the defeated high-level monsters, which guaranteed his friend's growth. Shortly after, our hero used his Eye of Time. That quickly made him realize that Rank 1 and Rank 2 entered a room and never got out. The party was now standing in front of an ominous door. Haruto declared that they shall enter at once, upon seeing how different the door was from the rest of the dungeon. The party quickly realized that behind it was the boss of the dungeon. The protagonist decided to enter the room of the S-rank dungeon boss, unlike what he had originally planned. Upon opening it, the young students were left amazed, as the two strongest students in the Azabu school, Shikigami and Rusaki, were lying on the ground defeated. With that, the party then looked up, only to find a black, stormy mass roaming above their heads. It then began to take form as it landed on the ground. With that, a childlike figure was formed on the battlefield. Its aura was mysterious and its power was ominous. All were left amazed as this child monster was supposed to be the strongest in the dungeon. This intrigued the 7th sage, as according to the database, a dragon should be the boss of this dungeon, and that this kind of monster was never seen before even by the 7 sages. As the monster revealed its teeth and began to roar, it turned out to be the ruler of darkness and a subjugation rank, the hidden boss of the dungeon. Upon seeing his attack power, the student council president urged the leader to retreat, seeing how they were outmatched, yet Buki stated that they were trapped. With that being said, the influencer asked the hero about the plan, yet he affirmed that there wasn't much to talk about, seeing how his plan was to become the strongest in Azabu, and that the monster that defeated those who currently hold the title was right here. He had no choice but to quickly defeat it, leaving the influencer shocked. Just like that, the protagonist charged at the ruler of darkness, only for her to charge a powerful attack, leaving our hero startled. Just like that, a powerful beam of darkness had been launched. The space-time mage quickly resorted to his quick body in order to successfully evade the beam. With that, he sliced off the monster, only for it to quickly regenerate. To Haruto's shock, the ruler of darkness then decided to launch a powerful breath beam. Realizing that he was now in a tough situation, the hero had no choice but to resort to his stop chain in order to immobilize the incoming attack, only for his shackles to quickly shatter, leaving him to dodge the attack at the last second. Haruto tried to take it down using Chrono Ray, allowing him to successfully blast holes into the ruler of darkness, only for it to immediately regenerate once again. The young man couldn't be more irritated as his opponent was still unharmed despite all of his attacks. Suddenly, he was caught off guard by the monster's giant jaws that managed to bite him off, to his party's utter shock, only for it to be a copy created by Avatar Replay that allowed our hero to escape. Chrono particles then began to come out of the ruler of darkness's mouth. With that being said, the space-time mage decided to resort to the light powers of his Chaos Sword in order to strike the head and body with Chaos Meteor. All assumed that he had finally scored a successful hit, but to our hero's shock, the black mass began to flee, only for it to reform the monster right away. Haruto couldn't be more annoyed as even Chaos Meteor was rendered useless. Suddenly, the student council president was left horrified as blue spots began to appear on the monster. As more and more blue spots appeared, the monster began to grow, allowing the hidden boss to gain a new form. This left the space-time mage utterly baffled as his opponent had used all of his attacks in order to reinforce itself. With that, he began to remember the plushie and wonder what it would do in order to defeat it, but decided to quickly shake the idea off as he had no time for it, seeing how he had to find a way to slay the hidden boss. And while the party was left concerned, the 7th sage resorted to her Akashic Eyes. The monster, who had gained a new form, lifted up his claw and quickly attacked our hero, who dodged at the last moment. The monster then began to mutate its body, allowing it to stretch its body in order to unleash a sneak attack that caught our hero off guard, leaving him no choice but to use level 2 of Stop Chain. With the fist of the monster being immobilized, the protagonist used this opportunity to charge at the beast and cut its top off. Yet it regenerated once again, before growing in size. Haruto was now in a tough situation as his attacks, which couldn't harm the beast, only made it even more powerful. Seeing how physical attacks were useless against the ruler of darkness, the protagonist quickly realized that it was his worst match, seeing how he uses a sword. Suddenly, our hero was left startled upon noticing the hidden boss morphing once again. The ruler of darkness had now turned himself into a giant sword, before quickly attacking our hero using his new form. The young man who blocked the slash at the last moment was blown away by its quickness, before being blown away by the black sword itself. This scene made the young boy rush to his friend's aid, yet the protagonist urged him to stay away, seeing how the monster was too quick for him. With that, Ibuki froze in place, but then the young man apologized for being useless, while the student council president decided to cast some buffs from afar. Haruto thanked her for her aid, and realized that this battle was hard to win, seeing how he had to protect his party from an opponent that could be damaged. Yet just as he began to think how difficult this situation was, he was shocked to see the influencer standing right beside him. Miura stated that he should attack where she tells him to aim, yet the hero was having none of it as he urged her to stand back like the others. The girl affirmed that she was perfectly safe, seeing how she was much stronger than what her appearance implied. This confused our hero, as she cheerfully stated that he should be able to grasp her true power, and so he decided to use his Eye of Time on the influencer, which shockingly revealed a powerful light behind her. The lady then affirmed once again that he should attack where she tells him to, as she had been closely watching his confrontation with the hidden dungeon boss. The lady revealed that her powers allow her to precisely study anything she takes a look at. After gazing into the monster, Akashic Vision was activated once again, which gave the girl a detailed description regarding the ruler of darkness as well as his strengths and weaknesses. With that, Muru summoned her magical lamb. The girl asked the summon for a way to defeat a shape-shifting glue-like opponent such as the S-rank hidden boss. So the creature explained how there was a core controlling the shape-shifting within the monster, and that the only thing able to accurately detect it was the undiscovered substance known as Chronos Factor. The mention of the shady element piqued the summoner's curiosity. The lamb then revealed to her that our hero possesses magic that uses the undiscovered substance. As Mura pointed out how expected it was for the protagonist to have the Chronos Factor, our hero was blown away by the fact that he had been discovered by her. The seventh sage pointed out that this was only natural as she had been studying him all along, and so she asked the protagonist to have faith in her as she would guide him to victory, by whispering the right way to defeat the hidden boss in his ear. Just then, the monster began to morph, transforming itself once again, and so Haruto let out a relieved sigh, as he decided to place his trust in the influencer, which quite pleased her. Just then, the S-rank hidden dungeon boss launched itself at the protagonist at high speed in the form of a lance. Upon seeing how fast the dark weapon was heading Haruto's way, all assumed that all was lost. But Haruto quickly jumped in order to make the first move, and so he gathered all of his strength in order to deliver a powerful blow. A few months earlier, the sage informed him that the monster's core was inside it, and that it couldn't be found by using magic, and that despite normal mages being unable to locate the core, our hero, who was a space-time mage, shouldn't have any problem, giving him the edge over the monster. Back to the present, our hero had sliced off the lance, only for it to begin changing form, leaving our hero in a tough situation. Suddenly, he noticed something coming his way, which was none other than the lance that thrust at him. Upon seeing this, all were left shocked. The young man was now in pain, yet was left pleased, seeing how everything was going according to plan. And while his friend couldn't be more intrigued, the influencer was left enthusiastic. The space-time mage could use the situation in order to carefully observe the insides of the ruler of darkness. And so after gathering some Chronos Factor into his fist, he punched the monster. And after wandering some time in it, he had finally managed to put his hand on the monster's core. After firmly grasping it, the only remaining task for our hero was to reverse the flow of energy delivered by it. Yet the monster reacted quickly, by creating small copies of itself, in order to stop our hero in multiple spots. Yet the young man wasn't impressed by such weak attacks, and with that he used Material Rewind on the hidden boss. With that, the lance became once again a sword, before taking the form of a monster and, in the end, returning to its original state. With that, our hero resorted to Stop Chain in order to immobilize the powerful creature in its infant form. Just like that, Haruto had now the chance to finish off the ruler of darkness. This intrigued the student council president, who assumed that there was no way around it, seeing how the monster had the ability to absorb physical damage. But the sage knew very well that a solution truly existed, and so, as he recalled how the plushie would have handled the situation, the hero was certain of his victory, seeing how he was the past self of his master. And so he asked his friend for his katana. Ibuki quickly agreed, before tossing it to our hero, who immediately grabbed it. The young man affirmed that he wouldn't try to damage the monster, and instead used the magical sword in order to suck in its power. With that, the monster began to disappear as our hero used all of his power. The ruler of darkness was now unable to maintain his physical form, before being overwhelmed by the enchanted sword, and finally exploding. With that, the hidden boss of the dungeon was gone, marking the victory of Haruto. All members of the party, especially Miru, were very much amazed by the incredible achievements of the young man, and while the two students assumed that they had finished their jobs, the protagonist affirmed that this wasn't the case. Seeing how the two strongest in Azabu were still not dead yet, to the student council president's shock, and so she urged the party to use magic in order to tend to the students' injuries, but Haruto affirmed that it would be useless seeing how critical their condition was. With that being said, he decided to resort to an item that the boy recognized as the Omega Potion. After that, the party made the injured ones drink the potion. They quickly began to regain consciousness. Upon waking up, Shikigami immediately recognized his savior. After realizing that the ruler of darkness was defeated by the party, Rank 1 and Rank 2 immediately expressed their gratitude towards our heroes. The young man stated that they shall give them anything they ask for as a token of gratitude. And so our hero asked to be the Rank 1 in the Azabu school, which Shikigami found easy. The girl asked him if this would be enough for him as a reward, which he confirmed, before revealing that it wasn't their strength that gave them their ranks, but their family names instead. Shikigami, who recognized his savior as the one who had defeated Raid of Nobunaga, stated that this made him more fit to carry the title of the strongest in his place. and so he gladly gifted his rank to the boy. Just like that, our hero was now considered the strongest in the Azabu school, leaving him very thankful. With that being said, he proposed to exit the dungeon, which left his party as well as the two he had rescued overjoyed, after finally heading towards the exit of the battlefield. Later on, while walking away from the dungeon, our hero was very pleased as he had now earned the right to challenge the board chairman and defeat him. But just then, he noticed something odd. As two figures seemed to be waiting for him and his party, the hero turned to his friend, asking about the identity of these two. The boy recognized them as the respective heads of the Minato branch of the Adventurers Guild, as well as the head of staff of Japan's self-defense force. Both of them approached our hero, asking if he was truly Haruo Kuju. Our protagonist, who was in a hurry, confirmed and demanded to know the reason behind their presence. The two men, who stated that they would be quick, presented themselves to our hero. The space-time mage was now left intrigued as he wondered what such two high-positioned individuals could seek from him. Kurogane pointed out how our hero was keeping his results as a secret from the guild, and that he was a C rank who, according to recent data, had abilities equal to A rank and S rank. Before asking for the reason behind not getting himself promoted, the hero affirmed that he didn't have to seek a promotion before calling out the both of them for coming at him so casually in the middle of the night. The tall one apologized for being so impolite before stating that they were also on a clock. Just then, the man turned to his fellow sage, asking her with body gestures about her opinion regarding the fighting style and the protagonist. The girl affirmed cheerfully that the young man was exceptional in the same way. Upon hearing this, the man addressed the space-time mage and offered him a job as the highest advisor at the Adventurers Guild Ministry, while his colleague offered him to become a strategic planner for the country, which left our hero utterly shocked. Kurogane explained that the human race was now facing a disaster like none before due to the regular appearance of hostile monsters and dungeons. The chief of staff then stated that humanity had to innovate in order to reinforce its forces. With the monsters' progress, they were sure to lose the war one day. Haruno couldn't be more shocked as the both of them affirmed that humanity was on the brink of extinction. And so the sage stated that he would turn a blind eye to everything our hero had done in the past before begging him to work with them in order to save the country. Ibuki was blown away by the generous offers made to our hero, and as he fainted, the influencer asked the protagonist about his decision. After taking a deep breath, our hero decided to refuse the positions, which stunned Kurogane, who demanded an explanation, seeing how their country was at stake. The student revealed that he didn't want to work for the Adventurers Guild or the government, before revealing that he also had someone he cared about, which is why he wished his country to prosper in peace. Yes, he was determined to be the one to choose the way peace will be delivered. The protagonist was certain that by regaining what was once his, all could be held at the same time. With that being said, he made his exit. As all the students rushed to follow him, the big names were left amazed. Ibuki expressed how intrigued he was to see his friend turn down such generous proposals, while Milulu couldn't help but admire him, and she decided to become our hero's partner in order to conceive a child from him. And days had passed since the incident in the S-rank dungeon. Our hero was now in front of the chairman inside his office. The man quickly greeted the student, who immediately demanded to resume their duel, seeing how he had become the first in Azabu. The man agreed, yet stated that before their duel, as he grabbed his weapon, the young man should follow him. This piqued Haruto's curiosity. Our hero and his soon-to-be opponent were now on the roof. As the chairman gazed down, the young man demanded his attention, before annoyingly asking if they had already reached their destination. The chairman then recalled how our hero's friend had told him about the skill cube within Azabu High School, which was the legendary dimensional slash that can only be mastered by an awakened one who was a master in the mysteries of the sword. The hero affirmed having heard such a rumor, stating that defeating the chairman would allow him to get the cube, and so he demanded the duel to be resumed right away. The sage quickly realized that our hero, who had perfect mastery over his fighting spirit, had grown more powerful since their last encounter. Upon seeing this, the man finally decided to unveil the truth to the protagonist, and so the chairman revealed that it was his grandfather who had created this school, and that he was known as Kiri Kagamitsu, the one who had a prophet skill, which left our hero intrigued. The chairman revealed that his grandfather gave them one last prophecy using his dying breath, a prophecy that stated that the apocalypse was now soon to happen. The man's last words were for the chairman to find the awakened one in order to help him slay all enemies of mankind. Yet our hero had no idea what the man was talking about, so the chairman revealed himself to be a member of the elite echelon of the Adventurers Guild, and that he fought the protagonist in order to see if he was the hero of the prophecy. The chairman revealed that our hero did well, becoming the #1 at his school, and that their previous fight was no coincidence. The impressive part was that the protagonist defeated the strongest in the school and even saved the elite students back in the dungeon in the span of 3 days. For that reason, he was certain that Haruto was the awakened one. Thus, he asked him for permission to give him the skill cube left behind by his grandfather. After all, the chairman didn't have the necessary qualities to use it himself. Our hero gave it a little thought. It didn't take him long to immediately decline the offer. He explained that he was tired of them trying to give him advice and order him around. This made the chairman wonder about the lot the protagonist was being lumped in with. This led him to a shocking realization. He quickly realized that he wasn't the only Kurogan making the young prodigy an offer. The chairman was greatly annoyed to see that the other Kurogan members were trying to make their move, but unlucky for them, he had already made his. Haruto clarified that he would act as he saw fit and that his main goal was to rescue a certain someone, no matter what it took. He added that due to his latest feats, he would be able to get his hands on the dimensional slash skill. The space-time wielder firmly affirmed that he refused to take orders from now on, as he had already been through enough in order to rescue that certain someone. When asked who this certain someone was that he wished to save, our protagonist told the chairman that he would keep this information secret. The chairman then asked him if the dimensional slash skill cube would be crucial for him to save this person. Yet once again, Haruto refused to answer the question. With that being said, the man decided to adopt a different approach. The chairman affirmed to our protagonist that from now on, he too would act as he saw fit. The surge of energy startled our hero. To his shock, the chairman was now readying himself to draw his sword. In the face of what seemed to be an imminent attack, our protagonist was left startled. Seeing this, he rushed to draw his blade. The young man braced himself for combat, but just as the swordsman was about to dash forward, and just as he was about to draw his blade, he suddenly gave up, leaving our protagonist intrigued. The chairman explained that he couldn't care less about this duel, and didn't mind giving the victory to the young man. He even began to approach while claiming that he wouldn't ask anything from him any longer. Our protagonist was left quite unsettled, as the man then reached out his hands in order to summon the skill cube. With that, the chairman began to work his magic. Just like that, the dimensional slash skill cube appeared in front of our hero. Haruto asked if it would truly be okay for him to take the skill cube. The chairman explained that he was free to do so, and swore on his position that he wouldn't bother him anymore. With that, the young man took the cube and decided to go on his way. He was intrigued by the lack of fighting spirit coming from the man. But there was no need to look into it any further, seeing how he had already gotten what he came for. With that being said, our hero decided to go on his way, but still decided to be wary of the chairman. As our hero left, the chairman proclaimed him to be the one and only awakened one. He had already predicted that Haruto wouldn't comply with regular methods, which is why giving him the cube was the best move. Now in his office, the chairman looked at the picture of his grandfather and asked him if he had done the right thing. He then proceeded to look at our hero walking away. The chairman was certain that one day the boy would return to his school. Later on, at the Shinjuku office branch of the Adventurers Guild, someone was working inside the weapon synthesis room. At that moment, our hero entered. The scientist was confused by the arrival of the student, as the school trip was scheduled for this afternoon. Only then did he realize who was in front of him. The scientist was devastated upon remembering our young man. Upon being recognized, Haruto thanked the scientist for his help. That day, our hero decided to postpone the scientist's many questions, and explained that he was here to ask him for a huge service. This intrigued the man, so the high schooler explained how he wanted him to imbue his sword with this skill cube, but this left the Four Eyes even more confused. A little later, the combination process finally reached its end, yet the sword didn't seem to be any different from before. At that moment, the scientist decided to immediately analyze the space-time element that was alien to him. After a quick search, the data showed him that the element inside the sword was affecting the Chronos factor, so he quickly returned to the high schooler in order to ask him about the nature of the so-called Chronos factor. But to his shock, the young man was nowhere to be seen. This greatly enraged the scientist, as the young man had failed to keep his promise, and had fled the scene before answering any of his questions. Just like that, the man was once again left alone, screaming in a room as a minor had gotten the best of him. Back to our protagonist. The only thing left for him was to scour the city with his eyes off time in order to search for a dimensional hole. Haruto began to pray that his future self was still alive, as it would be way too awkward to cry over his own corpse. Only then did he realize something. After stumbling upon a cake shop, he was reminded of an important promise. After a short while, his strawberry cake with Merry Christmas written on it was finally ready. The shop owner was greatly intrigued, as the young man was requesting a Christmas cake in the middle of summer, so he asked her not to worry about it. With that being said, our hero finally exited the shop. He was fully prepared to face what was coming next. Back then, his little sister had asked him to have a Christmas party. This greatly intrigued him, seeing how they were in the middle of July. Rai reminded him how he had promised her a Christmas party after her ballet recital, before she disappeared in a time vortex. She even recalled how he had promised her a gift in order to thank her for the one she had given him before. With that, our hero couldn't help but smile. In the end, what once seemed to be a promise to his dead sister that was impossible to uphold would finally be fulfilled. With that being said, our hero went on his way. He looked at the cake with tenderness and wished that it would be his little sister. But little did he know, something was watching him. An indescribable figure was stalking him from afar. Shortly after, our protagonist finally returned home. He placed the gifts in the kitchen. To his shock, his little sister was nowhere to be seen. Only then did he realize that she must still be at school at this hour. But just as he began to think about how she had promised him to do her best, the mysterious and indescribable figure from before appeared in front of him. Haruto immediately grabbed his blade and braced himself for combat. The figure didn't introduce itself. In fact, it didn't even utter a word. Only then did it break the silence by requesting the protagonist's sword. Being asked to hand over the Chaos Orb greatly confused our hero. He found this quite intriguing, seeing how this blade had just been imbued with a space-time element. Suddenly, the figure began to disappear. and before our hero could even realize it, it was now behind him, trying to grab his blade. The high schooler felt alert and quickly swung his sword at the astral form. Yet this one, barely damaged by the swing, simply backed away as it began to heal itself. It was as if it was never injured in the first place. This was extremely confusing for our hero, as he was now facing an unknown enemy with mysterious intent. Suddenly, the mysterious figure advanced once again and charged at once. Haruto immediately tried to fight back, but once again he found himself swinging at the air, and just as he tried to locate the enemy, this one appeared right behind him. The startled protagonist quickly turned around in order to strike it. Only this time, it didn't bother to dodge, it managed to catch the blade with its hands. Seeing how easily his attack was stopped, our protagonist was left horrified. The figure then imbued the blade with a small shock of electricity, driving a powerful current through the sword. The pain was so intense that our hero had no choice but to let go. In the end, the weapon was finally freed from its owner's grasp. The thief immediately grabbed it. At first it took a fighting stance, but just then it decided to run away. The horrified hero, he decided to follow it outside, but to his shock, the thief was nowhere to be seen. Our hero was now in a tough situation, as the thief had disappeared with his blade. But only then did he notice something intriguing. He recognized a familiar blade next to his door. The Chaos Sword was still there. Haruto was confused and quickly picked it up. As he tried to make heads or tails of what had just happened, his little sister returned. She was intrigued by her big brother being outside and asked him about it. At first he tried to explain, but seeing how complicated it was, he decided to brush it off, making him seem weird in the eyes of the little one. With that being said, his little sister grabbed him by the arm. She excitedly pulled him inside. Raya was happy as he would finally get to keep his promise. Just like that, our heroes finally had the opportunity to prepare for their own late Christmas party. Later that night, the Christmas tree was finally installed. All decorations were now in place. Raya presented the feast that she had prepared for her brother. With that being said, it was finally time to clink cups. The long-awaited Christmas party could finally begin. Our heroes rushed to attack the food. As soon as she took the first bite, the girl fell in love with the food. Her brother was also fond of the dishes. He immediately commended his sister's incredible cooking skills. Raya was overjoyed to the point where she proposed having such parties on a daily basis. Shortly after all plates were cleared, when asked about her school life, the girl explained how happy she was, as everyone there was kind to her. Hearing this left the older brother relieved. Only then was he reminded of something. Haruto finally gave his sister her Christmas present. The little one was grateful. She was immediately given permission to open it. The little girl was excited to see what was inside the package, and upon seeing it, she was amazed. Raya had received a bag for her ballet lessons. She looked at her brother with amazement in her eyes as he pointed out how she could now do her best with this gift. The little one couldn't help but start tearing up. Raya expressed her gratitude, while crying tears of joy. Seeing this, our hero couldn't help but smile. Having regained the privilege of enjoying such moments with his little sister was the greatest joy for him. At that moment, the phone started to vibrate. Someone was calling our hero. From the looks of it, this call was meant for Raya. As soon as she was greeted by Rina, the little girl started to smile from one ear to the other. Raya immediately pointed out how Rina seemed more mature than the last time. The girl apologized for not having joined the siblings for their Christmas party, as she had to prepare a dungeon investigation. Raya reassured her that no harm was done, as she was satisfied with what she had. Raya then asked the girl about her high school, seeing how her brother didn't tell her much about his school life. To the horror of the protagonist, it was revealed to his little sister that he had become a hot topic at school. Starting with the very hateful president that he took down in a magic duel, Raya was left blown away as Rini kept on singing the praises of her big brother. According to her, everyone was looking forward to him returning from his student exchange program. With that, the little one was left amazed by her older brother. She expressed how proud she was of him. Haruto urged her to cut the praises already. Shortly after, the little girl started to get sleepy. Brother and sister brushed their teeth, and with that being said, the little one finally went to bed, holding the gift from her older brother. Later that night, at Tokyo Tower, our hero stood alone at the top. The time had finally come. He would now try the impossible in order to rescue his master and his future self. With that being said, it began. Our protagonist resorted to his powers. He tried to focus his magic, and just like that, he managed to emit waves. His goal was to try and further the chronos flow of the entire area, which was a delicate and highly difficult task that required a lot of concentration. Even so, our protagonist was certain in his ability to succeed. After all, he was the past self of a great space-time mage. Upon remembering this, he couldn't help but smile. He was now more determined than ever to read the flow of the entire area in order to find the dimensional rifts. The protagonist was certain that he would definitely find one of them. He kept on searching and looking everywhere until finally something caught his attention. There was something odd about the bridge. A fracture in reality had been spotted. Haruto was able to locate the dimensional rift. Its location was right above the Odaiba Rainbow Bridge. From the looks of it, this bridge deserved its name. As soon as Haruto set foot on the bridge, he immediately began to search for the crack once again. It was now in front of him. With that being said, he pulled out his sword in order to start the operation. Our protagonist started to power up. His goal was to infuse his blade with as much chronos factor as possible. He then resorted to his space-time element. The sword was now charged with a great amount of energy. So much energy was concentrated that a giant ball of thunder could be seen at the top of the bridge. With that being said, our hero went for the swing. Haruto unleashed his dimensional slash with all of his might in order to finally free his older version. Back then, he thought that the space-time hall would remain forever closed. While the older brother was devastated and unable to believe this, the younger sister looked intrigued. She immediately recognized the old man as her big brother. The time traveler was left shocked. In the end, he faded with a smile as he welcomed the little one back to Earth. And with that being said, the space-time hole was closed. Now, inside an endless abyss, one man roamed alone. The time traveler, who had almost exhausted all of his strength, was overjoyed by the fact that Ria was rescued. He had already written a second letter for his younger self in order to leave everything else to him. The older Haruto prayed that his younger self wouldn't make the same mistake as him, and was certain that he would be able to deal with that one enemy. With that being said, he decided to fade away in peace. All of a sudden, the space around him began to crack. The time traveler was unable to believe his eyes. To his utmost shock, someone shattered the space-time hole he was imprisoned in. Upon seeing who was here to rescue him, the space-time mage was left utterly baffled. The teenager asked his adult self to use as much Chronos factor as possible, seeing how the crack was about to close. The man was left shocked and yet decided to react fast. Haruto started to emit all of the Chronos factor left in his body, and with that being said, he finally regained a tangible form. The past self quickly reached out his hand to the future one and urged him to use his Chronos factor in order to get closer. Thus, the time traveler quickly resorted to his power. With that being said, two links of Chronos factor traveled towards each other, and the two were finally connected. Haruto pulled with all of his might. Just like that, he was able to fish out his old master from the space-time hole he was imprisoned in. With that, the time traveler collapsed on the ground. This was rather pleasing for our protagonist, as it turns out that his old master managed to survive inside the hole. The time traveler was now breathing the fresh air of the outside. He was unable to believe what just happened, as he had just fled from an unescapable other dimension. Haruto affirmed to his future self that this was reality. With that, the old one took some time to analyze the situation. With great pain, he explained to his past self that despite his best efforts to save him, his fate was already sealed. The teenager demanded an explanation. So the adult explained that his existence in this time period was an anomaly, meaning that it was impossible for him to maintain his body for a long time. In other words, he was considered a virus by this timeline that should be eliminated. Upon hearing this, our hero was left horrified. His future self was slowly fading away. This was rather disappointing, but the teenager affirmed that this wasn't the case. According to him, not all hope was lost. Our protagonist had already anticipated this type of situation. For that reason, he had brought this one particular item. The time traveler was left amazed. He should have expected such great prowess from his younger self. With that being said, the toy started to move again. The time-traveling plushie was finally back. The time traveler proudly expressed that this was his real body, which seemed weird to his younger self. Future Haruto explained to the past one that this plushie was filled with the love of his sister, and expressed how proud he was to use it as a body. With that being said, the teenager knelt down and welcomed his master's return. As soon as the next day dawned, the animated toy presented itself to the little girl. The time traveler proudly announced his return to his younger sister, Ria. Ria was left quite shocked, as she now had him back. The plushie confirmed that it was safe to say the little girl was ecstatic, as he presented himself as the better version of her older brother, leaving our hero intrigued. With that being said, something came to the mind of his little sister. She had just remembered that she still hadn't properly expressed her gratitude toward the hedgehog. With that being said, Ria thanked her big brother, who did the impossible in order to save her. Her cute smile blew him away. In the end, he succumbed to a cuteness overdose and collapsed on the table. With that, our protagonist decided to speak. He explained that their family was finally reunited. Haruto proposed a quick recap of the most recent events and to discuss the upcoming ones. His little sister and the ridiculous plushie both agreed. With that being said, the three of them decided to build the best future possible. Meanwhile, in the depths of another dimension, someone was searching for the source of the sudden wave of Chronos factor, only to find a crack instead. Seeing this quickly made the entity realize that someone had tampered with the space-time continuum. The interference came from pin 34563, Earth. Upon realizing that this dimension was inhabited by simple-minded barbarians, the entity felt as if they were asking him to invade them by opening this hole. As soon as he memorized the coordinates, the conqueror decided to go there at once. This otherworldly creature was eager to conquer yet another world. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ria was left amazed. She was baffled to learn that the plushie she had named Harry was, in fact, the future self of her older brother. As the toy started to claim that it was superior to her actual big brother, Haruto started to wonder about the hardships it had endured to end up with such a personality. The toy even demanded to be called the smarter big brother, which the younger sister didn't have any problem with. Haruto urged her not to take the plushie too seriously. With that being said, the little one addressed both of her elder siblings. Now came the time for her to prepare breakfast. When asked if they wanted a Japanese or a Western breakfast, both paused for a second. In the end, the two of them did demand scrambled eggs and crispy bacon. Tension immediately started to rise. The best Haruto immediately confronted the future one, as he was supposedly unable to consume food in his toy form. Raya was taken aback to see two meatheads clashing with each other. Seeing this, she couldn't help but smile, and thus prepared the breakfast for her elder brothers. Shortly after, while swallowing the sausage, our heroes were quietly enjoying their breakfast together while watching the tablet. The plushie decided to break the silence. He wanted to know if his past self was doing what he had asked in his second letter. Haruto affirmed that he was somewhat following his advice. When asked about his swordsmanship, our protagonist revealed that he had taken down the strongest student at Azabu. He claimed that if his potential was truly in swordsmanship, he would maximize it in order to become an excellent space-time mage. Hearing this made the master happy. The toy decided to advise his student by revealing to him that he would later acquire a skill known as retrovision, but upon learning that his student had already acquired said skill, the mentor was left utterly shocked. He was unable to believe this incredible prowess. It was a shock for the time traveler to learn that his past self had a faster growth rate than him. This made him wonder if there existed a growth route that was unknown to him in this timeline. Suddenly, a huge explosion occurred. Upon seeing it, our heroes were left greatly alarmed. At that moment, a flash alert came in, warning everyone about a stampede. Countless monsters were spawning out of dungeons in the capital. This greatly shocked the young space-time user. According to the news, it was confirmed that monsters were coming out of numerous dungeons all around Tokyo City. They then showed the areas of the capital that the civilians should evacuate at once. The news affirmed that this disaster was real, and urged all citizens to work with the staff of the Adventurers Guild in order to safely evacuate. Hearing this, our hero, his ridiculous future self, as well as his adorable little sister, were left horrified. The toy was greatly confused, as this disaster was only supposed to occur later on. While our hero was baffled by the fact that such a stampede was bound to happen according to the toy, his little sister turned his attention toward the screen. From the looks of it, things just kept getting worse. Upon looking at the screen, the protagonist was unable to believe his own eyes. Rin was in the middle of the battle, fighting monsters. Meanwhile, on top of the tower, the entity from the other dimensions continued its aura farming. It couldn't help but let out a chuckle. The man was eager to see the adventurers take action. As the monsters kept rampaging all around the city, he grew impatient. The man desperately wanted to show the locals the immense difference between their powers and his. According to the villain, administration was the quickest way to conquer a new world. The monsters quickly progressed throughout the city. They started slashing and killing every single human in their way. With that being said, the report regarding the stampede in the capital finally reached its end. The S-rank adventurers, the 7 sages, all gathered in order to discuss the problem at hand at the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. The number of casualties had already reached 1,000 and kept getting bigger. In order to contain the situation, the branch heads of the Adventurers Guild Ministry had aligned themselves with the self-defense forces. Even so, the humans were clearly at a disadvantage and would be sure to be defeated if nothing was done. According to the first sage, 7 monster-spawning dungeons had already been spotted, with their numbers slowly increasing. Platinum, the second sage, claimed that this shouldn't have happened so soon. The third sage agreed with the second, claiming that everything was going just as the one known as prophecy had foretold. The distribution of defenses was then shown on screen. Sage number 1 was to defend the eastern district, while the second sage would protect the west. As for the third, he would be in charge of the south, while the fourth would take care of the north. Tantal, who was sage number 5, was to remain at the headquarters, and with that being said, the sages were dispatched. But before sage number 6 could receive his instructions, he decided to speak up. According to the chairman, this tragedy wasn't the work of nature, claiming this stampede to be a well-organized attack. Seeing how his friend was blown away, the 6th sage demanded to be free to investigate instead of focusing on defenses. After a short silence, he was granted permission to do as he pleased. As for the last sage, she was to remain at the headquarters in order to gather data and intelligence from the other 6. With that being said, Chairman Muramasa decided to go on his way. The Red Hat felt anxious and started to pray for his friends to return safe and sound. Meanwhile, the beasts were running wild across the city, as small and giant monsters alike were butchering citizens. All adventurers, including Rinny, were doing their best in order to contain the situation. But misfortune struck and the numbers weren't in their favor. At that moment, a giant ogre was about to strike her down. The girl had no way of defending herself. A loud bang then occurred, and yet the target of the attack was still safe and sound. The chains of time had been unleashed just in time in order to immobilize the giant creature. Shortly after, the monster was split in two. At first, the girl didn't understand what just happened, but as soon as she saw her savior, things became much clearer. Haruto arrived just in time to save his friend from what seemed to be a crushing death. Rinny was shocked to see him here. It was rather intriguing for her to see that he always shows up when he is needed the most. Our hero got straight to the point and asked the girl about what was happening, so she revealed how the student council of their school was helping defend the city. And as soon as she started to complain about there being too many enemies, our hero urged her to retreat and evacuate with the rest, while he personally tended to the problem. He and his future counterpart were eager to end things quickly. Despite having left his sister with his servants, the protagonist was still worried about her. At that moment, the plushie decided to make an exception and teach his student an adequate spell for this situation. This implied he could have taught our protagonist this magic from the start, but didn't. So the plushie explained that only Haruto's struggles made things fun for him. With that being said, the teenager had no choice but to criticize his adult self for his irritating personality. Meanwhile, one of the monsters, a golem, was wreaking havoc all across the city. This was the perfect chance for the space-time mage to use his new spell, Hexagon Prison. In the blink of an eye, the golem as well as two other monsters found themselves trapped in some sort of space-time cubes. The beasts immediately tried to break themselves free, yet the barrier was just too strong. The forces of order were extremely confused. Only then did the culprit show his face. They immediately recognized him as their savior and expressed their deepest gratitude. The cops immediately asked the young man about his identity, as well as his odd magic. He urged them to pay him no mind. He then handed them a portion and ordered them to tell their superior to use it to drive the monsters away. Haruto explained that this elixir, made with Mikado's technology, was infused with his space-time magic. He then proceeded to hand them a bag full of them. Our hero also asked them to quickly evaluate the citizens and request backup. The officers were intrigued, as they were being handed newly developed technology that was very expensive, so the young man asked them to pay it no mind and just do as he said. With that being said, the space-time mage left, leaving things in the hands of the forces of order. Meanwhile, on top of the tower, the Conqueror suddenly sensed someone tampering with the Chronos factor. He couldn't help but smile. It was safe to say that he was particularly intrigued by this exceptional mage hiding in this world. At long last, the villain finally found someone to cure his boredom. More and more monsters were getting trapped inside the cubes, and despite their best efforts, they were unable to free themselves. Just like that, the forces of order who cleared this area decided to pass the monster trapping potions to other areas as emergency supplies. All felt great respect toward the young space-time mage. In fact, they even started to think about talking to their superior in order to recruit him into their ranks. Meanwhile, the subject of the discussion watched the conversation from above. The toy began to tease him about talent and leadership, so he urged it to cut it out. At that moment, the young man received a notification. Someone had sent him a message. From the looks of it, he had been contacted by the chairman. It was a shock to see Muramasa inform him that the mastermind of the attack was on top of the Skytree, and that his help was needed to defeat him. This made the hedgehog understand why this enemy made his move much earlier in this timeline. According to the future time traveler, one of the foes that he had faced had come to Earth. Meanwhile, on the other side of the line, the chairman finally ended the call. Now came the time to address the serious matter. The swordsman was now face to face with the one behind it all. The Conqueror asked him if he had finally arrived. Muramasa apologized for making him wait. The enemy found it shocking that a simple human was able to locate him. He was rather disappointed that the one in front of him wasn't the space-time mage, so the chairman explained that he found him due to a prophecy given to him by his friend. This intrigued the other worlder. According to the prophecy, if the Conqueror isn't taken down, the known human world would be destroyed. With that being said, he unsheathed his sword and urged the Conqueror to ready himself. The other worlder was amused and asked the swordsman about his name. As Muramasa stated his name, he asked his opponent about his. The Conqueror introduced himself as Dot, the space-time mage. With that being said, their clash finally started. Meanwhile, somewhere not far, our hero was making his way to the Skytree Tower. According to the toy, the chairman must have resorted to his grandfather's prophecy in order to locate the enemy. For some reason, the protagonist had a bad feeling about the one behind this attack. With that, he finally stopped. The high schooler was now at the foot of the Skytree Tower. The plushie urged him to treat this place just like he did the Tokyo Tower. And thus, the young man started to climb, and in the end, he finally reached the top. But upon doing so, he laid his eyes upon something horrifying. To his shock, the director was lying in a pool of his own blood. Haruto rushed to him. He turned him over in order to check on the bleeding swordsman. The young man was horrified, as the sage had lost a great amount of blood. At that moment, the chairman finally woke up. From the looks of it, he was still alive. Haruto asked the injured one to save his strength and stop talking. According to the plushie, the man's condition was so critical that even a healing potion wouldn't be effective. So Haruto proposed to use an Omega potion instead. Only then was he told that it wouldn't work. It was a shock as Dot made his appearance. Dot explained that since he wounded the chairman with the Chronos factor, healing potions were deemed useless. Haruto was now face to face with the one behind it all. Meanwhile, his future self began to panic. Upon seeing Dot, the time traveler realized that they were in a critical situation, as Dot was one of the enemies that he least wished to stumble upon. At that moment, the chairman started to cough blood. This left the young student quite alarmed. Things seemed bad. Muramasa claimed that he was a doomed man, and so seeing how his breaths were numbered, he urged the protagonist to lend him an ear. Haruto couldn't be more shocked. The chairman revealed that he wanted the help of our protagonist in order to overthrow the organization. But it seemed that this would be impossible now, as the threat he was trying to prevent had already made its way to Earth. This threat was malevolent and had an evil smile on its face. The chairman explained that, in the past, a dimensional portal leading to the extinction of their race was opened in Azabu. He explained that if nothing was done, the threat would bring the doom of humanity, and that he tried to approach the protagonist to seek his help in order to take down this threat. And with the young man arriving to help him, the prophecy had finally been completed. Now the only thing left to be done was to leave the future in the hands of the space-time mage. At that moment, the plushie pointed out that the chairman's grandfather also died due to these events. Realizing that the toy knew about his own tragic fate, Muramasa found it to be rather observant. With that being said, the director entrusted a teenager with the future of their race. He was certain that the young man would succeed where he had failed. And with that being said, the sixth stage finally closed his eyes. Our hero was left horrified. He tried his best to wake the kind man up, but the worst had already been done. And just like that, Haruto held the corpse of his friend while screaming at this atrocious fate. Dot couldn't help but chuckle and urge the human to cut the drama already. He was eager to face off against the one who could manipulate the Chronos factor. With that being said, the teenager gently placed the director on the ground and quietly stood up. Before he could even realize it, something odd began to happen. Both hero and villain were now in a different location. The protagonist and his future self couldn't believe it. They were no longer on top of the sky tree. Dot had transported them to the large Imperial Palace Plaza so that they could fight at full power. Seeing how teenage Haruto was confused by the odd powers of the enemy, future Haruto explained that they were up against Dot, who was also a space-time mage, and to our hero's shock it was revealed that this enemy wasn't from this dimension. With that being said, the young man quickly drew out his blade, only to notice something alarming. The conqueror, who had closed the distance, began to criticize the young man and his plushie. He found it ridiculous that they were talking strategy in the middle of the fight. The universe is a combination of countless dimensions linked all together by the Chronos factor. Yet when the link is fractured, a wormhole that opens up two dimensions to each other would be formed, but only those with a certain mastery over the Chronos factor could perceive it, meaning that wormholes could only be located by space-time mages, one of them being our hero as well as his future self, and the other being Dot the Conqueror, the same Dot who rushed at our protagonist trying to land the first blow, only to then be left intrigued. He was surprised to see that his young foe had evaded his attack using a space-time shield. This spell was known as the space-time palm. Seeing this, Dot decided to adopt a different approach. For the first time, Haruto found himself the victim of Stop Chain. The enemy then used Avatar Replay before pointing out how our protagonist could use the same tricks as him. With that being said, the one in the red fired Kuro right. In a flash, a huge blast was launched at our hero. The high schooler felt startled. The plushie urged him to release as much Chronos factor as possible. Haruto had no choice but to resort to his full might. This allowed him to break free from the chains in order to counter the blast just in time with his blade. The high schooler would have already been a goner if he had hesitated a single second. Dot was intrigued by his blade that could tamper with the Chronos factor. This made him realize that this sword was the tool that the young man used in order to penetrate the dimensional rift. At that moment, the toy warned its past self that Dot had the exact same power as him. Haruto thanked him for this pointless advice while thinking about how it would be challenging to fight another space-time user. Dot was intrigued by the fact that his powers were being compared to that of a child, so he affirmed himself to be a superior being who shouldn't be taken lightly. With that being said, he started to twirl his fingers. At that moment, something opened up below the feet of our hero. Before he could even realize it, the young man was sucked into it. At that moment, something started to happen in the sky. A second hole opened near the space-time user. The protagonist couldn't be more confused. As he was now falling from the sky, his opponent couldn't help but laugh. The boy immediately realized that they were now in a pickle, as he recognized this spell as Dimension Gate. Just like that, the high schooler received a punch from a higher being to the face. The blow was so powerful that it knocked him back up, pushing him to the gate, leading to him being sucked in once again. Haruto began to fall once again. He found a foot above his head, ready to welcome him. The villain couldn't help but smile as he kicked him back up. Our hero fell into the portal once again. Just like that, and once again, as soon as he got out, the opponent was waiting for him at the other end. Just like that, a cycle of agony was set in motion. The enemy would kick the young man into the portal again and again. As soon as he got out from one end, our poor hero found himself taking a ferocious beating. Dot couldn't help but find his enemy utterly pathetic. The boy couldn't take it any longer. It seemed as if his body had stopped responding. Thus, the conqueror decided to put an end to this once and for all. But at the very moment that he tried to fire the final beam, a presence that was uncalled for suddenly stopped him. Even so, the one in red quickly managed to evade the attack. The falling high schooler was caught just in time. The time traveler finally entered the fight. Haruto was confused to see his future self regaining his true form. So this one explained how he could only maintain this body for a short time. Future Haruto claimed that he would try to distract the enemy while his past self came up with a way to take him down. Upon seeing this, Dot couldn't help but laugh. It was a shock for him to see that the weird-looking toy from earlier was in fact the all-powerful space-time mage. It had been a long time since these two interacted. Dot was shocked to see that the only lower being that he respects was dwelling in this world, and he even claimed this to be a marvelous coincidence. With that, the weakened time traveler would try his best to take on the conqueror. The two old enemies were now face to face. Our protagonist was desperately trying to catch his breath. Seeing how the one in blue summoned a space-time sword, Dot immediately smiled and summoned his blade as well. With that being said, the villain charged at the hero first. While the madman was looking forward to the clash, the time traveler was bracing himself for the worst. Just like that, the two space-time blades collided with each other. From the looks of it, Haruto was slowly losing the edge, and so he decided to resort to his Avatar Replay level 200. In the span of an instant, his clones charged at the red one. Yet this one was entertained to the point where he decided to turn this into a team fight, and with that, Dot summoned his clones as well. The clashes were fierce, and Haruto found himself getting distracted by a Dot. It didn't take long for the red clones to start overwhelming their blue opponents. Seeing this, the time traveler decided to use his gravity fall. Just like that, the evildoer was suddenly crushed. His feet were slowly sinking into the ground. Dot found himself under outstanding pressure. With that being said, now came the time to use Chrono Homing Ray. The time traveler summoned countless beams of energy, with each one of them frying a clone. With that, the conqueror found himself getting crushed by an immense weight and surrounded by countless swordsmen. He found himself unable to escape the gravitational pull. Haruto then used his stop chain in order to restrain the opponent. The opportunity of slaying Dot once and for all that the time traveler missed in his own timeline had appeared in this one. Now came the time to execute the finishing move. With that being said, Nebula Impact was unleashed. The conqueror began to fear the worst, as such a powerful attack could surely cause great damage. But all of a sudden, something odd began to happen. The clones were disappearing one after the other. The time traveler found himself unable to maintain his human form at the most crucial moment. Even so, he was determined to take down Dot. The conqueror was about to lose this body. But to his misfortune, the opponent noticed the links weakening. With that being said, Dot freed himself from the stop chain. And yet his enemy had already reached him. And just like that, a great explosion occurred. Blood began to drip on the ground, but this wasn't the blood of the conqueror. The other worlder who had just escaped death tried to catch his breath before calming himself down. Dot managed to clutch the situation using Dimension Gate. He had used the ability to create a wormhole, which he used to escape the blade by a hair. Once safe, he used a smaller gate in order to slice the time traveler's arm clean off. Haruto's defeat was caused by his inability to maintain his human shape. With that being said, the one-eyed villain raised his sword. He couldn't help but smile as he decided to deal the finishing blow. But just then, someone stopped him. Our protagonist arrived just in time to protect his master. The conqueror was left baffled, as the hero explained that he would be fighting him from now on. Meanwhile, in Nakano with Ria and Cerberus, the little one felt great about that. The stampede in their area had finally stopped. From the looks of it, the mighty beast seemed to be happy as well. Even the all-powerful three-headed dog turned into a cute little puppy. In front of a cuddling Ria, he thanked her for keeping him safe from the countless monsters that he had slaughtered. The girl then began to pray to her older brothers, claiming that she was all right and wishing for them to achieve victory. But little Chino, her big brother, and his future self were in a pretty bad state. The master apologized to his student for his failure. The protagonist urged him to save the talk for later and just regain his toy form. Already, Haruto decided to personally tend to this problem. Seeing this, the other space-time magician couldn't help but chuckle. He found this rather hilarious, as not a few minutes ago, our hero was unable to scratch him. Our hero couldn't care less about his remarks and decided to talk about the powers of Dot, especially his ability to create portals. Haruto pointed out how the conqueror had freed all those monsters by using his powers to link many dungeons to the surface. This led to the loss of thousands of lives, but the conqueror couldn't care less. With that, the protagonist affirmed that the villain was beyond forgiveness. The toy watched all of this in shock. He started to wonder if his younger self had really found a way to take down the enemy. In front of this, the villain couldn't help but chuckle. He found it rather entertaining that Haruto wouldn't grant him forgiveness. Dot explained that he couldn't care less about the feelings of an inferior being. With that being said, he started to channel his power. He unleashed his Dimension Cutter. This new spell transforms a portal into a powerful shuriken. This was the exact same all-cutting spell that Dot had used in order to take the right arm of the time traveler. Seeing this, the master urged his student to evade at once. But this one refused. Our hero had something else in mind. The young man closed his eyes and began channeling his power. This left the hedgehog baffled. Dot found this to be utter foolishness and assumed that this was his victory. But only then did it happen. The Dimension Cutter was sliced in half. This was only possible due to a very specific technique. The conqueror was unable to believe his eyes. Our protagonist, who was now safe and sound, had used this dimensional slash in order to slice the enemy spell. The master was left particularly shocked, as his young apprentice had recalled his fight with Nobunaga. This greatly irritated the conqueror, and thus he bombarded his young opponent with a shower of destructo discs. Even so, the protagonist remained perfectly calm. He took a deep breath and channeled his energy. The trick was to stop relying on sight and to start using the body in order to sense the flow of the Chronos factor. Our hero had the ability to slice the factor itself, and by doing so he had the power to destroy the incoming blades. And just like that, all dimension cutters were sliced to pieces. Their caster was unable to believe his eyes. Even the master was left quite shocked, as it seemed like his apprentice had been enlightened at the last minute. With that being said, the high schooler decided to make his move. He channeled all of his power into his blade in order to deliver the final strike. It was too late for the villain to dodge, leaving him no choice but to try and take on the slash head-on. He had used his time and space shield in order to parry the attack. Little did he know the high schooler had expected this much. The plushie. He immediately recognized the dark power coming out of the blade. Dot was unable to understand what was happening. Before he knew it, something bypassed his shield. The blade then reformed itself after bypassing all of his defenses. The protagonist put his whole heart into this one attack. And just like that, Dot took his first serious damage of the entire fight. This decisive step toward victory left the toy overjoyed. The conqueror took a lot of damage and was now in a critical situation. With that being said, our hero firmly grasped his blade and urged the villain to brace himself for what came next. This one couldn't help but laugh, claiming that there was no way such inferior beings would be able to take him down. Dot explained that someone who transcends dimensions like him had more in his arsenal than time-space magic. This startled the protagonist. Seeing how the young man seemed clueless, the villain decided to teach him something important. Earth, like countless other pin worlds, is under a certain influence. This influence is the reason behind the creation of the gates. This led some inhabitants to become adventurers and obtain status windows. Dot pointed out that the protagonist must have noticed this by now, and yet our hero was still clueless. Thus, the red space-time mage pointed out to the blue one that this was rather odd. Dungeons randomly popping up in different dimensions, with each one of them being filled with otherworldly monsters. To top it all off, by pure luck, the human race discovers status windows and magic in order to fight back. This was rather shocking for our young man. He quickly deduced that Dot was saying that the world they were living in was fabricated. Yet even the one who transcends dimensions didn't have the answer to the question. He affirmed that the hero had missed the whole point. Dot explained that due to this almighty influence he had acquired super future magic, a one-of-a-kind skill. This startled our protagonist, as it seemed like a power that surpasses the future. And with that being said, the villain decided to use his hidden power. Just like that, reverse reload was unleashed. But from the looks of it, nothing seemed to have happened. The only difference was that Dot was nowhere to be seen. The toy pointed out how the Chronos factor was acting oddly and urged the young man to stay on his guard. A creepy calm settled all around our heroes. Everything seemed to be normal. Everything seemed to be quiet. But only then did the protagonist notice something, alerting Haruto. Haruto quickly parried the blade that was supposed to land on his back, but upon doing so, he was left quite confused. Dot had barely put any strength into this attack. With that being said, our hero finally sliced him down. At first you assumed that the villain was finally defeated, but then something odd happened once again. Dot was nowhere to be seen. Haruto was left utterly shocked. His master repeated the exact same words from before. Everything seemed to be normal. Everything seemed to be quiet. This made our hero realize that he was now reliving the same moment. With that, he quickly deduced that the attack would come from behind, just like last time. Yet to his shock, the enemy was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a wormhole opened above his head. At that moment, the conqueror tried to take the high schooler from above, only to be blocked at the last second. Even so, the young man found himself struggling to parry the blade. Even so, he managed to fend his opponent off and slice him in the abs. Haruto then finally delivered the final blow. And just as it seemed like he achieved victory once again, the odd thing happened once again. Our protagonist found himself back where he started. Seeing how he was reliving the same instant for a third time, Haruto realized that he was trapped in a time loop. As the master repeated his words once again, the creepy calm returned. Everything seemed peaceful. Nothing seemed harmful, leaving Haruto quite shocked. Seeing how distracted he seemed, the toy urged him to keep his head in the fight. The fact that the time traveler didn't notice the time loop yet wasn't surprising, seeing how he was currently in a critical state. But just as our protagonist began to wonder what needed to be done, a portal opened behind him. As soon as he noticed it, the young man slashed the villain. As another portal opened behind him, he quickly took down the one that came out of it. This made Dot point out how determined his young opponent was, and yet he kept on attacking again and again. His goal was to determine every single survival route within the reach of our hero. He wanted to see how long it would take him to fall. Dot couldn't help but laugh as he rewound time once again, plunging our hero into the exact same moment once again. This left him quite annoyed, and before the young man could even realize it, a portal opened right beneath his feet. In a flash, the conqueror came out of the portal and slashed the young man. Haruto felt agonizing pain. The wound was so severe that he started to cough up blood, as it was the first real critical strike that he had suffered. Dot pointed out that the last seconds of his opponent were almost up, and with that being said, he restarted the drill once again. The young man returned to the exact same moment, only this time things weren't totally similar. The wound that he had gotten remained on his chest. Only then did a portal open behind him, and before he could even realize it, he found himself getting slashed. Dot kept on torturing the protagonist again and again, slicing and hitting him from all directions. Haruto had taken a crazy amount of damage. He had a hard time breathing. With that being said, the enemy decided to land the finishing blow. The ability of the opponent to continuously rewind time was problematic. Our hero had a hard time remaining on his feet. He even started to lose hope, seeing how powerful enemy magic was. Yet even then, Haruto believed in his own ability, and believed in himself until his very last breath. In order to locate the enemy, he decided to use his Eye of Time and shut off all other sensations. In the end, he was the perfect mix between a space-time magician, as well as a swordsman. The master was left quite shocked. The Chronos factors surrounding his student suddenly stopped moving. With that, the young man braced himself and took his stance. The time traveler was shocked, as his past self seemed to have reached a peak that not even he was able to reach. He was certain that this new technique would allow the young man to quickly notice the enemy and counter his surprise attack. Dot couldn't help but find the protagonist brilliant. With that, the boy stood ready for the attack. He had prepared himself to eliminate Dot as soon as he appeared in his sight. But although that, the conqueror still hadn't made his move. Only then did a portal open behind him. The villain was now hesitating before launching his attack. He was shocked to see that there was a local here who had such mastery over the Chronos factor. It was the first time that he had encountered someone who would be able to take him out immediately if he charged in recklessly. Seeing this, the conqueror decided to adopt a different approach where the high schooler wouldn't be able to fight back. With that being said, a dimension gate was opened. Dot reached into the new portal and pulled out someone else. At that moment, our hero noticed something horrifying. What he feared the most had been realized. Wire was now captured by the villain. A few moments earlier, in Nakano, the girl was treating her protector to some bread. From the looks of it, the hound seemed to enjoy the food. But little did she know he wouldn't be able to shield her from what came next. Before the girl could even realize it, she was suddenly snatched. She was forcefully pulled into the portal before disappearing, and the beast couldn't do anything. This left him quite annoyed. Cerberus grew careless and failed his mission. At the same time, at the Imperial Palace Plaza, Raya became the hostage of Dot. The little one screamed to her big brother for help, so he was left horrified. Now, with his little sister in the way, the protagonist wouldn't be able to fight properly. He was unable to comprehend how she had gotten here. Raya should have been safely at home under the protection of Cerberus. So Dot explained that the mighty hound would be powerless if the girl was snatched up through a dimensional wormhole. Dot pointed out that he was able to track down his little sister by looking for someone with the same Chronos factor frequency as his opponent. According to him, taking the life of the little one would shatter the morale of the big brother to the point where he wouldn't be able to use his absolute counterattack zone. Our hero was now in a tough situation, as his absolute zone was starting to fade away. Raya was completely at the mercy of the conqueror. Dot pointed out that if anything happened to the girl, her older brother wouldn't be able to fight. With that, our hero began to beg for mercy for his little sister. Seeing this, Dot immediately smiled and impaled the innocent child from behind. Both past and present Haruto were unable to believe what just happened. Raya was unable to remain conscious any longer, and with that being said, she collapsed to the ground with a giant hole in her back. Her chest. Seeing this atrocity, Haruto was unable to believe his eyes. He couldn't take it any longer. The mighty protagonist crumbled to his knees. In the end, the older brother was unable to protect his little sister. Seeing this, Dot burst out in laughter. He had successfully caused the high schooler to have a mental breakdown. Due to the success of his plan, the young man was no longer able to concentrate. His absolute zone had now disappeared. The only thing left to do was to put an end to the young man's misery. With that, Dot decided to kill the powerless victim whose heart was filled with hate, while laughing like an absolute maniac. At that moment, something awakened inside Haruto. But unfortunately, his head was sliced. Dot had already landed the canning strike, yet the fight wasn't over just yet. Something incredibly odd just happened. The conqueror found himself utterly confused. For some reason, he was rewound a few seconds into the past. The one he had just killed was still breathing, and thus he decided to take the life of our hero once again. He didn't think twice before taking the life of the young man once again. With that, he thought that he had achieved complete victory. But little did he know, things were far from over. For some reason, time kept getting rewound. Every time he finished off the protagonist, time would be rewound, landing him in the exact moment right before he killed him. Dot was left utterly baffled, as this time loop was similar to the ones that he created with his super future magic. The system confirmed that this was the case. As Haruto, who was beaming with the Chronos factor, stood up, his opponent was left horrified. Our hero, who had now acquired a new form, revealed that he was the one behind the time loop. The protagonist was now more powerful than ever. His hair color and hairstyle had changed. Even his future self was confused by what was going on. Only then did he realize that, in this timeline, there might exist a growth route for space-time mages that even he wasn't aware of. At that moment, the window panel announced that the hidden quest of the Imperial Plaza had started. Its title was Awakening Despair. All the conditions were satisfied. This allowed our hero to obtain the super future magic, as well as the reverse reload spell. To top it all off, he even received a passive skill that would allow him to double his potential release. With that being said, our protagonist had achieved a new peak. Dot was unable to believe his own two eyes. He was horrified by the fact that a supposedly inferior being was able to use his super future magic. The thought of a local from this world entering the same domain as him infuriated the evil conqueror, and thus he threw his dimension cutter at the anomaly. Haruto simply erased his hand and swallowed the all-cutting attack with a wormhole. Dot was left utterly shocked. Seeing this, he decided to take things to a whole other level, and bombarded our hero with the tempest of shurikens. Even so, the teenager remained unfazed and opened countless wormholes, leaving his opponent horrified. Haruto had successfully swallowed all the projectiles. He then asked the conqueror if he enjoyed being trampled on by an inferior being. This arrogance was shocking for the villain. It quickly got on his nerves and got the best of him. And so, in a surge of anger, he charged at the young hero. Haruto was waiting for this, as the conqueror had now stepped into his absolute zone. And just like that, the villain found himself under the power of Stop Chain, which was now immobilizing him. With that being said, the protagonist firmly grasped his blade, affirming that he would never forgive the evil conqueror. Now came the time to deliver the finishing blow. Haruto gathered all of his strength and unleashed his dimensional slash, dealing great damage to the abominable villain. With that, Dot started to scream in agony. He then crumbled to the ground. Dot was no longer able to fight. He started to cough up blood, and was unable to accept his defeat. Only then did something happen. The after effects of the dimensional slash started to unfold. To his horror, a dimensional rift was formed. The rift started to suck him in. Dot tried his best to hold on, but in the end, the pull was too powerful. And just like that, the powerful conqueror was sucked inside. The rift closed shortly after. Now, with the annoyance out of the way, the powerful protagonist rushed to tend to the most critical problems. Haruto rushed to his little sister. He gently held her in his arms, and upon seeing how lifeless her body seemed, he begged her to hold on for just a second. And with that being said, our protagonist started to disappear, before quickly reappearing. This greatly intrigued the master. Haruto apologized to his sister, made her wait before using the spell rollback. The time traveler immediately recognized it. After all, this was one of his skills. It was one of the extremely difficult time-space spells to master. Our hero traveled to the past in order to learn it. The body of the little girl was restored to a healthy state. And with that being said, Ria finally opened her eyes. She was greeted with a gentle smile. Ria was shocked to see herself in the arms of her elder brother. Our hero then tried to reassure the little one. He affirmed with a wide smile that he had driven the villain away. When asked if he was telling the truth, the young man nodded. The relieved Ria immediately thanked her other brother. Still terrified, she rushed to hug him. She even apologized for having become a liability in this fight. Yet our hero affirmed that he should be the one apologizing, seeing how she was endangered because of him. Watching this from afar was a time traveler, amazed by the fact that there was another growth route, while wondering how much the protagonist would grow. Meanwhile, in the eastern district of Tokyo, the first mage reported that his area had been cleared. The second sage in the western district had accomplished his mission as well. In the south, all monsters had been terminated as well. The report of the victory in the north followed shortly after. According to the fifth stage, the headquarters were secured as well. This victory overjoyed the seventh stage. The Red Hat expected nothing less from his peers. Once again, the seven sages were able to protect humanity. The only thing left to do now was to wait for the sixth sage, so that all seven of them could celebrate their victory together. The stampede incident was finally over, and its mastermind was driven away. Yet no one knew at the time that this was only the start of the real battle. So the video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, activate the notification bell, and see you next time on Tob's channel.